In this absurd post-apocalyptic world after nuclear war, all girls must have 10 children before the age of 30, otherwise they will be removed, and as the most popular female singer at the moment, Luo Yusin has chosen a homeless person for herself to complete the task. His name is Ren Xiaosu at this moment. He is taking a makeup test in the acid rain above his head, and the wind and rain do not move all night. But what he is waiting for is a giant sparrow, and the sparrow after the interval is the size of an eagle. After several battles, Ren Xiaosu, who had not eaten for several days, broke out a strong desire to survive and twisted the neck of this giant sparrow with his bare hands, thinking that this sparrow should be able to exchange it for several days of rations for him and his brother at the grocery store. Suddenly, there was a sound in his mind, and Ren Xiaosu knelt down on the ground, and his mind was like a huge child's bell ringing, completely falling into dark chaos. And this time it was different from the previous time. The black fog in his mind actually opened to reveal a palace inside. Ren Xiaosu suddenly opened his eyes and stood up in disbelief to look at himself. This time, he woke up so quickly he had the opportunity to take a good look at the appearance of that palace. But he knew better that it was useless to fall into a coma and die in such a wilderness, and he had to rush back to the plain formation outside the 113th refuge barrier. But he stood up and a man behind him was holding an ancient knife. "Give me the prey," but before this person finished speaking, he saw a huge iron pot in his field of vision, swimming far and near, and slapped him in the face. The robber didn't expect Ren Xiaosu's movements to be so crisp and so big. Ren Xiaosu at this moment didn't care about these, carrying the iron pot and rushing back. After a while, he heard footsteps approaching again, hurriedly turned around to look, and found that Ren Xiaosu had come back, and asked him if he wanted this sparrow originally. Ren Xiaosu didn't plan to come back, but he heard a voice from the palace in his head. "The task is to give the prey to others." Ren Xiaosu stuffed the sparrow into the other party's arms without saying anything. The unfamiliar and neutral voice sounded again. "The task is complete. Reward the foundation and skill learning map supplement. You can learn the abilities of others." The robber held the huge sparrow tightly in his arms and was ready to say something thankful. "You are such a good person." Before he finished speaking, he watched Ren Xiaosu drag the sparrow away again and didn't give it if he wanted to. Then he walked away. The robber looked at the back of Ren Xiaosu, who was running wildly all the way. "What kind of people are there? What are you trying to do?" Because of the robber and the sudden coma, Ren Xiaosu returned relatively late. He glanced at the sky that was about to be pulled into darkness at this time. It is extremely dangerous to pass through the emergency with prey, and during the day there are people in the refuge fortress who come out to rule the order, and at night those people return to the fortress. Ren Xiaosu, who was originally quite relaxed, suddenly became vigilant after entering the emergency, and he even pulled out a bone from his waist. "Don't mess with him," a voice ended the whispering. It seems that someone understands Ren Xiaosu's process, how hard it is for girls in this world. They must have 10 children before the age of 30. Otherwise, they will be expelled on the boiling ground after the war. Human civilization is still alive. Acid rain drifts through the sky. Wild wolves roar in the wilderness. The consortium in the walls sings. Every night the homeless people outside the walls are starving and cold. How much is the giant sparrow that Ren Xiaosu squatted and hunted all night worth? Under the inspection of Wang Fugue of the grocery store, a sparrow weighs 3 catties and 6 tails. 201 catties of sparrow meat. Count you, 700. The price of meat in Moshi is not cheap, not to mention that this is game. After some bargaining, Ren Xiaosu's obscene expression burst out at the price of 1200 Wang Fugue is pure family wealth, is still 2 yuan short. Looking at the quota hanging above the leader of Moshi is particularly cold. Ren Xiaosu didn't think about it, so he was ready to buy one for his younger brother. Looking at the wound on his hand that was scratched by a sparrow, he asked about the price of anti-inflammatory drugs. 1 pill 210. You need to eat it for 3 days in a row. Ren Xiaosu looked at his wound. Forget it. Don't buy it. It is generally not inflamed in winter. After leaving the grocery store, Ren Xiaosu opened the curtain of his house. The warm clothes inside made his body seem to be no longer so stiff. Yan Luyuan, who was sitting in the shack and doing his homework, looked up and saw that Ren Xiaosu was back. "It was a surprise. When will I be able to hunt with you?" But how could Ren Xiaosu let his younger brother, who was dependent on him, risk his life with him? Knowledge is the most important thing, no matter what happens in an emergency. Mr. Teaching is always the safest one. No one will bother Mr. Teaching's idea. After speaking, he stood up and prepared to cook some sparrow offal for Luyuan. At this time, Liu Yuan also saw the injury on Ren Xiaosu's hand. The big iron pot was on the stick. The fire in the shack made Ren Xiaosu's cheeks stiff and dark. It was just a small injury. The room fell silent after a while. Ren Xiaosu took out the sparrow internal organs in the pot and handed it to 6 Yuan. After eating Liu Yuan, his eyes suddenly turned red. I don't eat, you eat. Do you need to recuperate? I saw someone in an emergency a few days ago who died of inflammation and infection because of a little wound. Liu Yuan was so stubborn that tears were about to flow. Ren Xiaosu suddenly slapped Liu Yuan in the face and said, "You remember? You and I can't shed tears if we live in this world. This world doesn't believe in tears. Look at what kind of people are around us. You don't have enough. What if someone rushes in at night and stabs us to death?" Liu Yuan took the sparrow internal organs that Ren Xiaosu forced over and devoured it. Tears did not fall. After all, he has to learn to be as strong as Ren Xiaosu. Seeing that Liu Yuan was like a beast, Ren Xiaosu touched Liu Yuan's head. "Eat it quickly. When you're full, try the new padded jacket I bought for you." After eating, the two began to rest. Ren Xiaosu closed his eyes and began to enter the spiritual world in the palace. Ren Xiaosu walked to the round table. A piece of paper reads, "Quest rewards basic skill learning graph to learn the abilities of others." In the empty palace, there is nothing but a few tables and cabinets, and a typewriter that has been obsolete in front of the store for a long time. In this ridiculous last days, this widowed woman. I often think about the man who is 8 years younger than me, and the woman is forced by life to be said that he is not clean. Just after Ren Xiaosu fell asleep, there was a sound of footsteps outside the curtain of the shack. There is a unique slippery feeling when the boots step on the muddy road after the rain. The door curtain was lifted by someone, however, before the people outside could completely lift the door curtain. Liu Yuan's ancient knife was already against the other party's neck. It was a beautiful face. Outside the door was a beautiful woman. This woman's name is Li Xiaoyu. The woman just entered the door and looked at Liu Yuan, who put away the ancient knife, and said with a slightly unnatural face, "What about Xiaosu? I heard that he was injured. His hand was pecked by a sparrow." "But Sister Xiaoyu, you don't have to be so sad about my brother. Are you 8 years older than him?" Whenever after Ren Xiaosu fell asleep, Liu Yuan faced outsiders. "All have a mature temperament that does not match their age," Li Xiaoyu retorted with a slightly red face. "People are small ghosts. I treat you as a younger brother." After speaking, the two were speechless one after another. I don't know why Li Xiaoyu always felt that Liu Yuan didn't like him very much, so he chose to leave first. After Li Xiaoyu left, Ren Xiaosu's voice suddenly sounded behind Liu Yuan. "Don't always bully you, Sister Xiaoyu. In the future, it is not easy for him to be." Liu Yuan's reply is, "Brother, he is not clean. I also saw him smoking a few days ago. Cigarettes are only something that Bilei factory will distribute." "I don't know which wild man it got from," Ren Xiaosu said in a calm tone. "Who is clean? People who want to live in this world can't be clean. It's all forced by life. It's good to gather and stay away. Don't tease him. In this emergency, a single woman is too clean to survive." The two brothers sat down one after another. "I may also have some kind of ability." Sitting at the door of the shack and glancing at the curtain, after looking at the curtain of the starry sky, Liu Yuan was stunned for a moment. "I'm not sure yet. I have to try it." Ren Xiaosu heard the scene of Liu Yuan for the first time in his mind. "As long as you make a wish, you can make it true." Liu Yuan's ability is lucky, but after making a wish, it will be counterattacked. Suddenly, a meteor crossed the sky. Liu Yuan subconsciously put his hands together and made a wish, but was pulled down by Ren Xiaosu. "Don't make a wish, something will happen." Thin Liu Yuan looked at the meteor that had disappeared. Why did the meteor fly so fast? What if everyone didn't have time to make a wish? Ren Xiaosu thought about it and said, "He's flying fast. Maybe because he doesn't want to hear what you wish for." In this absurd post-nuclear world, all girls have to have 10 children before they are 30 or they're going to be removed. However, when the 25-year-old Li Xiaoyu walked into Ren Xiaosu's shack, what was waiting for him was Liu Yuan's cynicism, and he had no choice but to leave. And in the morning, Ren Xiaosu followed Liu Yuan to the school to listen to the class. There is only one gentleman in the school named Zhang Jinglin, and the teaching in the school is taught by the gentleman alone, and many parents of children send their children to the school, not to find knowledge for their children. Rather, it is sent here to facilitate the marriage of children in the future, especially girls who have gone to school, and they can usually promise good families. And in this era, reading and knowing 3-digit arithmetic are already very wrong. However, it is still relatively rare to have a studious person like Ren Xiaosu after class. Zhang Jinglin asked Ren Xiaosu, who was secretly learning, to stand at the door to listen to the class, and went to the backyard of the school while everyone was having lunch. Zhang Jinglin was eating fried cabbage. Ren Xiaosu took the initiative to hand the cigarette to Zhang Jinglin with a smile. Thank you. Mr. Let me stand at the door and listen to the lecture. In Ren Xiaosu's opinion, others expressed kindness. I want to repay Zhang Jinglin for lighting a cigarette and spitting out the fog. The studious Ren Xiaosu also took advantage of this time to ask a question before the catastrophe. Human beings had a lot of technology, now it has disappeared. Zhang Jinglin glanced at Ren Xiaosu. It is not bad that human beings can survive during the period after the catastrophe. How can they have the heart to do learning? Saying that, Zhang Jinglin looked at the barrier, although some information was kept. But these materials are only in the hands of a few people. Snuff out the remaining half of the cigarette in his hand. He wants to keep half of it and smoke it later, but in front of Ren Xiaosu. Will it be a bit shameless to do this? Zhang Jinglin stood up and was about to change his clothes, indicating that his clothes smelled of smoke. Ren Xiaosu was suddenly a little unhappy. Then I smell it. Okay. Mister, you didn't let me stay away just now. Zhang Jinglin's head was covered with black lines when he heard this, and at this time, the palace in Ren Xiaosu's mind happened again. Task. Thirst for knowledge is never a bad thing, but what you learn must be taught. In the afternoon, the students felt very fresh, and there was Ren Xiaosu, who was several years older than them, standing outside the door, so that many students turned back to look at him, and Zhang Jinglin knocked on the blackboard several times to stop the curiosity of these students. Survival class this afternoon. What should you do if you encounter wolves in the wild? Zhang Jinglin pointed to Xiaosu. Come tell me what to do if you encounter wolves in the wild. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while, and said you should try to choose a hillside. There are trees all around because it is better to choose the feng shui in this way. When Zhang Jinglin was speechless about Ren Xiaosu's answer, he didn't know that Ren Xiaosu himself was confused now. Isn't this the knowledge you know to everyone? Why hasn't the task been completed? After a moment, he hesitated and said, Mister, you probably haven't seen the shadow outside, let alone encounter wolves, even if you encounter a lone wolf. Let's choose the purpose directly. Originally, Ren Xiaosu thought that Zhang Jinglin would repeat himself, but he didn't expect that he would directly become a substitute teacher. Completing the task rewards a little ability. Now Ren Xiaosu is really sure that the palace in his mind is indeed a different ability. When he came home from school, he said excitedly, Brother Dao, you have become a substitute teacher now. Maybe I can succeed Mr. Zhang as our emergency professor in the future. On the way home, the two brothers saw a group of mercenaries looking for a guide to enter the mountain, and a unique woman in the crowd caused Ren Xiaosu's doom. How terrifying this woman is. At a young age of 17, she has perfect firearm skills, but such a woman is in a private army. His name is Miss Yang. When Ren Xiaosu passed by him, he felt like a beast encountered in the wilderness. The two brothers witnessed the army looking for Wang Fuguwei. Maybe Wang Fuguwei will recommend Ren Xiaosu to be a guide, but the danger of entering the mountain. Ren Xiaosu knows in his heart if you don't make it, you just go in vertically and come out horizontally. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu heard footsteps outside. It is rare for someone to walk around like this on the street at night. Emergency. But Ren Xiaosu quickly guessed who the other party was, and guessed their purpose, and their group learned about Ren Xiaosu's miracle from the mouth of the miscellaneous old king. Although there are people who are sick to the brain. But they asked some more people, and it seemed that everyone thought that Ren Xiaosu was the best person for them to choose a guide. Xiaosu, come out, there is a distinguished guest. Lao Wang shouted with a smile. Suddenly, the curtain of the shack was violently opened, and directly Ren Xiaosu happily held Lao Wang's hand and said to Lao Wang, Boss Wang, congratulations. Father and son are safe. 6 caddies and 6 tails. This move confused everyone. They pointed at Ren Xiaosu and looked at Lao Wang, who was sick like this, and he called it okay. What the hell is the father and son pinging? Aren't they all mother and son safe? As soon as the words fell, they turned around and left. Originally, they still had some expectations for the legendary Ren Xiaosu, but now they have encountered a mental illness. Ren Xiaosu stood at the door of the shack and watched them go away. Lao Wang was still apologizing to the other party on the side. You listen to my explanation. This group of people is too lazy to listen to Wang Fuguwei's explanation. Wang Fuguwei, I offer you to find a suitable candidate for me before dawn, and don't give us waste wheels. Ren Xiaosu stood at the door of the shack happily, watching the excitement like a nobody. But at this time, Yang Xiaojing actually glanced back at Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu suddenly had a feeling of being seen through. The target skill will be randomly studied to randomly select the opponent's firearm skill whether to learn the power supply prompt sound keeps sounding. You have learned advanced firearm mastery. Ren Xiaosu had a question in his heart. How did the basic atlas learn advanced skills? It turns out that the basic atlas can learn any skill under advanced memory. The master atlas can have a chance to learn the natural ability of the target. At this time, Ren Xiaosu thought of Yang Xiaojing, and suddenly asked what is Yang Xiaojing's firearm skill level. The word perfect was deeply reflected in Ren Xiaosu's mind. Such a person will be in a mercenary against you. The matter behind it is definitely not simple. Brother, why do you keep staring at people's backs? Yen Luyuan grabbed the cloak and asked. The curtain of the shack next door was lifted. A girl asked, where is who's back at this time? Yen Luyuan and Ren Xiaosu were stunned. The person who came out of the shack next door turned out to be Li Xiaoyu. In this absurd apocalypse, this lonely woman is forced to make deals in order to survive, and she is even more involved in the exchange of her brick house and shack, and she approaches each other as a neighbor. Just after Li Xiaoyu appeared next door to Ren Xiaosu, Yen Luyuan whispered in Ren Xiaosu's ear, brother, you are still a virgin. Are you going to have anything you don't understand? Just ask. This question made Ren Xiaosu glare, and the embarrassed two greeted Li Xiaoyu and went back. The two people who went to the room saw the potatoes and anti-inflammatory drugs under the table, and recalled that they were injured when they encountered wolves last year. It is also in this place that there are medicines to keep themselves alive. Now it seems that these medicines are put here by Li Xiaoyu. At this moment, a rough voice came from outside the shack. Xiaoyu, it turns out that you moved here. I brought you cigarettes. Ren Xiaosu and Yen Luyuan glanced at each other. Both of them frowned and only heard Xiaoyu say, I will not do that kind of thing in the future. The man seemed to have heard something funny. You don't do that kind of thing. What do you eat and drink? Who will give you a cigarette in the future? Ren Xiaosu stood up and untied his bone knife from his calf. At this moment, a voice came from the palace in Ren Xiaosu's mind. Task help. When Ren Xiaosu received a strong voice first and rushed towards the man like a cheetah, the man quickly pulled out his knife from his waist and slashed at him. However, in the next moment, his ridicule came to an abrupt halt. The bone knife and the iron weapon collided with each other and shattered into two pieces at the same time. Ren Xiaosu grabbed the man's wrist and smashed the other fist like a cannon hammer. Ren Xiaosu looked at Xiaoyu. Who is he? He is a foreman on the other side of the coal mine. He took the lead in stabbing the person who died in the emergency last night, because he heard that the man had a habit of saving money, and it happened that he owed money to the casino, so he had bad intentions, and Xiaoyu said what the man showed off yesterday. Just when Ren Xiaosu was about to kill him, the voice of the palace sounded again. Ren Wu was worried about the enemy's way of life, and as soon as the palace voice fell, Ren Xiaosu squatted down, picked up the bottle of iron, and handed it into the man's abdomen. You still have about 3 minutes to go. If you go to the emergency clinic in time to get stitches, maybe there is still hope to survive. Ren Xiaosu said with a calm face. That man still cares about the pain. He didn't say anything, and immediately got up and ran towards the clinic. Task completion reward basis and learning chart. Task completion reward basis and learning chart because you lack a weapon. The side quest is specially opened. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. I don't know how the palace is determined. He turned his head to look at Li Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu in the night is a little weak. Can you quit smoking? Li Xiaoyu nodded vigorously at this moment. Ren Xiaosu grabbed his hair. Although I am very handsome, it is impossible for us. Li Xiaoyu's expression was instantly wrong. I just treat you as a younger brother. This time, it is Ren Xiaosu's turn to be wrong. Awkwardly took Yen Luyuan to his own nest. Li Xiaoyu immediately laughed when he saw Yen Luyuan's appearance. It seems that those bad moods have also disappeared. While Ren Xiaosu closed his eyes and looked at the palace carefully. This side quest is a bit interesting. Pay attention to this. This is a universal golden medicine sent by the system. External application of second system knives, guns, swords, and other external injuries. Oral administration can make men old, and do it just now. Ren Xiaosu received a side task from the palace, and the content is to get 100 sincere thanks, and for each thanks, you get a thank you coin, and you can get it in the palace vending machine every time you use it, so that when he gets the panacea for the first time, it is applied directly to his arm. The effect is also surprisingly good in Ren Xiaosu's eyes. The value of this bottle of medicine is 100 million after 4 tongues and 5 pounds. In order to get more thank you coins to exchange for the universal medicine for this, Ren Xiaosu also deliberately opened a surgical outpatient clinic, but no one in his background was willing to treat him, so he had no choice but to arrest someone to come over. His name is Taitu. After being smeared with black medicine by Ren Xiaosu, Because he was curious about the ingredients of the black medicine, he tasted it with his tongue, and as a result, he tossed his mother-in-law all night of course. All this news was learned from Wang Fugui's mouth. Knowing that Ren Xiaosu had such a miracle medicine, Wang Fugui didn't hold it, and came directly to ask for medicine. Ren Xiaosu sold a bottle at a price of 600 yuan. By the way, I also received a thank you with a good reputation. Ren Xiaosu's clinic also opened smoothly as soon as it opened. I met 3 people who passed by the door with injuries. At this time, the palace prompt sounded. The 3 patients who treated them all said that the twisted melon was not sweet. Ren Xiaosu could pour it and directly tie the 3 back. Li Xiaoyu came out and saw the situation. I thought that these people were fighting in a group. It turned out that they were injured because the boiler factory exploded. Ren Xiaosu, who knew the reason, was ready to ask Li Xiaoyu to stitch up their wounds, although the black medicine has a magical effect. But you also have to make a show. Li Xiaoyu plucked up his courage and walked towards a person's wound. As a result, he heard a sound of scorching on the person's skin. The man asked tremblingly, "You take the fire needle to sterilize, I can understand, but can you wait for the needle and thread to cool before you?" After some tossing and turning, the task was also successfully completed. Reward: a little zero strength and a little zero agility. In the middle of the night, the news that the wolves were in an emergency came to everyone's ears, and guards were also dispatched within the barrier to rescue the remaining people in the boiler factory. Seeing such a battle, Ren Xiaosu and Yin Luyuan also went out. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu thought in his heart that the manager of the boiler factory was equipped with a gun, but he was still attacked by the wolves. Maybe the wolves were too fast, they didn't have time to get the gun. The purpose of Ren Xiaosu's trip was to get a gun. This boy has a skill that many people dream of. As long as he makes a wish, his dream can come true. Ren Xiaosu walked through the darkness. Ren Xiaosu, who had acquired advanced firearm skills, knew how important firearms were in today's era. Suddenly, a gunshot burst out in the dark. Ren Xiaosu turned his head to look at the source of the sound. This is clearly an encounter between Si Jun and the wolves. Ren Xiaosu listened to the sound of gunshots in his ears. I don't know why he always felt that this crisp sound was a little pleasant, so that his adrenals began to split. The whole person was excited. He didn't go to take a closer look at the battle scene. He only knew that now the wolves and the army were fighting, so the factory was safe. Ren Xiaosu deliberately observed their wounds, and it seemed that they were directly bitten by the wolves on the neck and killed directly. After thinking for a moment, he didn't go in directly through the gate, but climbed up along the pipe outside the factory. When Ren Xiaosu climbed to the bottom, his heart was cold. It seems that there are no living people in this factory. The wolves swept the entire factory. No one was spared. Ren Xiaosu smashed open the top glass and jumped in. He looked around. There were blood stains and corpses in the corridor. This huge factory is like a purgatory, but Ren Xiaosu suddenly noticed that something was wrong. All the bodies seemed to be running in one direction, as if something was guiding them, and he went all the way down this route, all the way to the basement, which is the emergency shelter, and the further he went, the more corpses. Ren Xiaosu came to an iron gate. After thinking for a long time, he raised his hand and knocked on the door 3 times. There was a creak. The iron gate suddenly opened, revealing a middle-aged man inside. Ren Xiaosu bent down and was about to rush over, and when this middle-aged man saw that the person who came was not in the army, his first reaction was to raise his pistol. The two knew each other. The middle-aged man is Wang Dongyang, the manager of the factory. Ren Xiaosu analyzed that the other party must have been the first to flee here, close the floodgates, block the others out, and now threaten himself with a gun. Wang Dongyang sneered. The pistol gave him incomparable courage. He has no fear now. How do you know? Ren Xiaosu pondered. Jizi Mazhov. I still know one thing, Ren Xiaosu said slowly. You didn't have the insurance for this gun, and you didn't have time to open it after getting Wang Dongyang. Ren Xiaosu used an ancient knife in Wang Dongyang's chest, imitating the traces of the wolf's claws to create wounds. When Ren Xiaosu left, there was no one alive in the entire factory. Ren Xiaosu hid the gun under the iron pot as soon as he arrived at the shack before he could chat with Yin Luyuan. This is a Si Jun who came from outside. It is said that he came to find the lost gun when several people entered the house to search. When did Yin Luyuan start to make a wish with both hands? A large group of people were in such a small shack. I was stunned that I didn't find this pistol after seeing these people leave. Yin Luyuan breathed a sigh of relief, and then fell to the ground. In this ridiculous last days, what kind of experience is it to have a beautiful big sister of the Lin family to take care of? After Yin Luyuan made a wish, What followed was Trans looking at Li Xiaoyu's intimate and careful appearance. Ren Xiaosu said softly, "You can rest assured I will definitely take you to a good life. What I got was the disgust of the two of them early in the morning of the second day. Wang Fugue came early in the morning to report the good news because Ren Xiaosu's black medicine cured Luo Fatzi's golden hoop stick. It just so happened that the doctor in the clinic ran away. Ren Xiaosu, a surgical outpatient clinic, is now suddenly mixed up with a genuine doctor in the morning. Ren Xiaosu and Li Xiaoyu cleaned up casually and went to the clinic. Can live in a special room with a bright window. Who wants to live next to the nest? It's just that the moment Ren Xiaosu and a few people walked into the clinic, the whole person was not fun. I saw a police flag hanging on the wall of the clinic. Wonderful hand rejuvenation. Roland is in. Ren Xiaosu is a confidant the palace prompts should be past legacy mission whether to continue to treat 10 patients. As soon as he accepted the task, someone came to visit the patient. Ren Xiaosu said with a smile on his face, "What kind of injuries are you two? Let me tell you. Come on, let's come to the right place." "That's great," the man said. "We are not injured. It's just that my wife has been pregnant for 4 months. This morning I suddenly had a little pain in my stomach. I am afraid that something will happen, so come and see." Ren Xiaosu told the truth on the spot. Ponder for a moment. Bao or Bao Shao. This sentence made the two couples speechless for a while. Then he said that he would not see the rehabilitation. Sincerely let the two of them go to find someone else to see. The husband and wife married each other. They didn't expect Ren Xiaosu to say this, seeing that Ren Xiaosu was much more reliable than the previous doctor. He expressed his gratitude and left. Unexpectedly gained 2 thanks. Then the clinic also began to get busy. The reputation is getting better and better. Ren Xiaosu also successfully completed the task while harvesting thank you coins. He also started the follow-up task. What are my current strength and agility attributes? Strength 5, agility 4, 1. Ren Xiaosu did not speak at this time. It seems that his own attributes are still relatively balanced. Yin Luyuan suddenly asked his brother, "Why don't you treat all those patients? That's all money." Ren Xiaosu said that he would not mean that we could not learn from the previous doctor. There must be a bottom line in being a man, but if something happens to us, there may not be anyone to help. Yin Luyuan lowered his head and whispered. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yin Luyuan. He knew that Yin Luyuan was still young, and the 3 views were still in the stage of formation. Ren Xiaosu solemnly said, "Luyuan, you remember, don't let the sadness of the times become your sorrow." The man opened his mouth and spit out a saliva bubble unexpectedly. The next moment the bubble burst open and burst out with a force, directly flying Yin Luyuan. This is a form of supernatural ability. His name is Zhang Baojin because he has awakened his extraordinary ability. He specially came to Ren Xiaosu to see a doctor. Night fell. Ren Xiaosu thought to himself that the transcendent began to appear slowly. The world is also becoming more and more dangerous. I hope it would be good to unlock the weapon as soon as possible. Suddenly there was an abnormal noise outside the courtyard wall. Ren Xiaosu hurriedly got up and walked outside. I heard someone suddenly jump up from outside the wall and put his hands on the wall, and then the other person supported himself with both hands, and the whole person jumped into the courtyard. As soon as those people looked up, they just saw Ren Xiaosu's curious gaze, and the next moment he saw Ren Xiaosu suddenly shaving his legs, and countless guests fell to the ground in pain, covering their crotch and crying bitterly. The other 2 were also cleaned up by Ren Xiaosu in an instant. Just as he was about to force the other party to ask each other, there was a knock on the door. A familiar voice said, "Open the door quickly." Ren Xiaosu remembered this voice. It was the one who led the army to search the entire emergency before. When he was about to kick the door of the clinic opened, and then all the soldiers outside the door fell into confusion, and they saw Ren Xiaosu wrapped in a big pennant. I saw that the pennant had on it that said "Wonderful Hands Rejuvenate Roland." As a result, the man walked around him and walked inside to search. When the officer saw the soldiers who were still rolling on the ground in the courtyard, his face became gloomy. A group of wastes. He turned his head to look at Ren Xiaosu. "My name is Wang Tsongyang. If you want to find Boss Luo to give you anger, you can report my name." "That can't." Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. "You didn't do anything." Wang Tsongyang looked at Ren Xiaosu carefully. The soldiers under his command searched for a few minutes and came out to report that they didn't find Wang Tsongyang, leading the team to leave without saying a word before leaving. He turned his head and looked at Ren Xiaosu with a smile. "If you were born in the barrier, it would be good if you came to me to be a soldier, better than this group of wrecks under me." When Ren Xiaosu learned that this officer was called Wang Tsongyang, he was shocked. He was very worried that this thing would keep biting himself at dawn. Ren Xiaosu and they were woken up by a voice. "Everyone, look." The previous June came back, opened the door, and go out to take a look. I was still thinking about how I came back so soon when I watched these people leave. They were still quiet one by one. Now they are more embarrassed than the other. Ren Xiaosu calculated the time for a week or so. The other party probably didn't arrive at the foot of the mountain. Looking at the torn clothes of these people, and then look at the peaked cap girl who followed behind the off-road vehicle. And from that point of view alone, this girl in the cap is much stronger than the soldiers who are accompanying her. Do you know what are the most vulnerable parts of the human body? There are nearly 20 people near the trachea of the entire police department. No matter which one is broken, it can instantly make the other party incapacitated. This is the most important lesson that Ren Xiaosu teaches children as a substitute teacher. How to confront people. Zhang Jinlin used to teach how to deal with the natural environment, and the reason why he wanted to teach this course. It's because he's seen with his own eyes how ordinary people are killed. After Zhang Baogan's superpowers awakened, he bragged to his friends in the lake shed everywhere because of the betrayal of his friends, which also led to Zhang Baojin being captured by people inside the barrier to do experiments, and Zhang Baogan's father was also dissatisfied with the reasoning of these people. The result of theorizing with a few people with an axe was that Zhang Baogan's father died with several people, and his mother couldn't bear the pressure and chose to go with him. Ren Xiaosu witnessed all this with his own eyes, and he was angry at the injustice of the world, but what he could do was to let more people have the ability to protect themselves. In this way, Ren Xiaosu chose to teach the children how to fight against others, in order not to delay in this class, and quickly finish the knowledge and left the class, which also made him successfully harvest a wave of gratitude. But at this time, Ren Xiaosu saw Wang Fuguwei running into the school through the classroom door. You can quickly pack up your things. Just now someone brought me a letter from Boss Luo, saying that Boss Luo agreed with you to repay them. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He realized that this team must have a more obscure and important purpose. Otherwise, how could the other party persuade Boss Luo to release him no matter what? Ren Xiaosu may really have to go this way. Turn around and walk towards the backyard of the school. Wang Fuguwei asked communicatively, "Where are you going?" "I will go to the school, Mr. Zhang, to discuss something. Let Yin Luyuan and Sister Xiaoyu stay in the school first, at least until I come back," Ren Xiaosu said firmly. Only like this. Ren Xiaosu has no worries. Li Xiaoyu and Yin Luyuan helped pack the things in the clinic before leaving. They stuffed their money to Li Xiaoyu. He knew that the money could not be left to Yin Luyuan. In case Li Xiaoyu had any thoughts about this money, it was a big deal to take the money and leave, but he would not expect Yin Luyuan. Li Xiaoyu smiled kindly and said, "Sister, I understand what you mean. You can go with peace of mind. Come back." Well, there were 3 knocks on the door. The door opened. Ren Xiaosu looked up and saw a well-dressed girl standing at the door. "You should know all about it. Come with us." But at this moment, Ren Xiaosu suddenly heard the palace in his mind say, "Let me refuse to go to Jingshan. Daddy's father is called Li, and Dad's mother is called Grandma." Ren Xiaosu pretended to be crazy and stupid and wanted to refuse to go to Jingshan. This is an officer from the 4th Army who came over. He looked at Ren Xiaosu and said with a smile, "Don't pretend we have dealt with each other." As soon as Ren Xiaosu looked up and saw that the person who came was Wang Tsongyang, he couldn't pretend to be able to do it now. "I am afraid that if you don't want to go, you have to go." Looking at these people, Ren Xiaosu shook his face directly and said, "I won't go." Task completion, reward base, and skill learning chart. You can learn the abilities of others. Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. The task was completed. Sure enough, this palace is the standard for judging whether the task is completed or not. It is not an established fact, but as long as Ren Xiaosu's attitude, Wang Tsongyang saw Ren Xiaosu's refusal, just wanted to get angry. I went to Ren Xiaosu and said seriously. This made Wang Tsongyang look suspicious and walked in front of Luo Xingyu. "I want a reward of 30,000 yuan also." Wang Tsongyang can't go with him. Ren Xiaosu knew in his heart that this Wang Tsongyang came to check himself twice. Let him follow. Maybe there is some kind of gossip. "This is Luo Xingyu." Looked back at the cap girl. I saw that the cap girl had retreated and nodded. Luo Xingyu said, "Yes, Wang Tsongyang, you go back." Just now, Luo Xingyu secretly glanced at the girl in the cap and fell in the eyes of Ren Xiaosu. "Everyone will be teammates in the future." I don't know what everyone's name is. Second Lieutenant of the Field Service Division. Su Xianchu, Miss Liang Hibiscus' sister. Ren Xiaosu sat in the front of the car. The sound of the roar of the vehicle engine sounded in his ears at the moment of leaving. Ren Xiaosu was still a little reluctant in his heart. No matter how dirty this place is, it is also my home. All these years the road to Jingshan is not easy to walk. Most of them are dirt roads. Sometimes Ren Xiaosu sits in the front of the car. I also saw the occasional concrete road on the ground, but those roads didn't know why they were broken. It became dilapidated looking at the vegetation on the side of the road. It was a lot more lush. Even the cabbage in Mr. Zhang's house was much taller than before. Ren Xiaosu thought to himself. Maybe in the future, a potato can make a family of 3 full. Thinking about food. Ren Xiaosu touched his stomach, and in curiosity, he opened the oilcloth and took a look, and saw biscuits and bottled water. When night fell, the convoy also stopped and began to go wild. Everyone got out of the car one after another and began to get food. Came to the back of the splitting tower. The result was shocked. Ren Xiaosu, what are you doing? Ren Xiaosu looked at the people who came. Don't be surprised. I didn't do anything. I had to eat a little bit, and I couldn't hold back. Ren Xiaosu stood up and moved his body, and by the way, he also patted the biscuits on his body and made a fire. Several people grabbed Ren Xiaosu out of the car in the disgusted eyes of a group of people. Ren Xiaosu replied first, yes, you have a little biscuit. As for do you know which egg will break when it touches a stone? The answer is not an egg, but a hen's heart is broken. This is a conversation between Ren Xiaosu and people after getting out of the car. In the face of other people's questions, Ruoxin replied indifferently, you can target him, but don't affect our itinerary. Wait for us to come back from Barrier 112. You can do whatever you want with him. Seeing Ren Xiaosu walking towards the forest, the others were a little anxious. If Ren Xiaosu left, they would waste their time again today. Without a guide, it is impossible for them to find their way through the woods to the mountain. Ren Xiaosu turned around and grinned. I'm going to look for something to eat. What are you panicking? The staff explained awkwardly. The guy died near here last time Ren Xiaosu walked in the forest, and his brain kept thinking. How did the guy die last time? This is when Ren Xiaosu saw something like sawdust on a tree. This is the trace left by the white clothes. After eating, he poked towards the root of the tree. Sure enough, there was a piece of soil bag that was abnormally caged and wrapped around the roots of the tree. Ren Xiaosu kicked the soil bag away. In 3 or 2 clicks of surprise, the brown termites inside were crawling rapidly. He was going to use it as a fish to fish in the future, and then he could float slowly down the river. Ren Xiaosu slowly followed on the shore. Suddenly, a black shadow swam from below. At the same time as the water surface was rippling, a big fish opened its mouth and wanted to swallow it in one gulp. But as soon as he opened his mouth, Ren Xiaosu's branch had already arrived, and he withdrew the branch like lightning. The big black fish kept struggling on the branch, but it was useless. Ren Xiaosu left the river a little bit vigilantly. It seems that the blood of the black fish has attracted something bad. The river gradually converged. Dense black shadows drove back to the camp. Ren Xiaosu's grilled fish was full of fragrance. These people wrinkled their noses when they smelled the aroma of grilled fish. Hee, just a fish. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu heard the palace in his mind say tasks. Good things need to be shared with others. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a long time. He picked up the branch of the spearfish and walked towards them. How can you invite us to eat fish? It is not impossible. What do you think? Ren Xiaosu said. I just let you take a look. Share my happiness. Reward a little agility for completing the task. Ren Xiaosu looked at this fish. Is almost half a meter long. One person can never finish eating half a fish for 3 bottles of water. Ren Xiaosu sat alone next to the fire that he was angry. Yang Xiaojing came over and sat opposite Ren Xiaosu. He said calmly. Fish. Ren Xiaosu found that the other party's tone was calm and a little unusual. However, I didn't know what reason to refuse. The other party let you eat 2 bites. Ren Xiaosu said strongly. I saw that Yang Xiaojing also opened his mouth to the maximum in 1 bite. He almost ate a quarter of the remaining fish. Ren Xiaosu was shocked at the time. You are a girl. Can't you be a little reserved with the end of the absurd world? The mutation of the race has become extremely terrifying. The sparrow is the size of an eagle. The wolves are bloody and brutal. The road grows and mutates to be extremely strong. Even the demeanor of a bee can kill people in an instant. Just after Su Xianchu's team lost 1 person. Looking at the parcel bag in the pocket of the car at this moment, in Ren Xiaosu's heart, the food in the car is the most important thing entering the mountain. Volcanic activity is frequent and dangerous. What is it that attracts them to risk their lives to go to the huge mountain peaks that pass through the canyon and make the sound of whizzing black leaves, the wonder and magnificence of nature? It is vividly reflected at this moment. Everyone look at the words here. Everyone walked over and took a look. I don't know who carved the names of 4 heads on the stone wall. The living person did not enter. Su Xianchu looked at Ren Xiaosu. Who carved this? Ren Xiaosu shook his head. When I came here last year, I didn't have these 4 words. Why did you come here? The 4 gentlemen said, even if you are hunting, you should not come to this kind of place. Who are you? You must have hidden your identity. Ren Xiaosu lowered his head and said in a gloomy tone, "Yes, there is something that I haven't told you. I am actually the descendant of the dragon." This sudden anti-transfer person was caught off guard. Su Xianchu pointed the gun at Ren Xiaosu and said, "Let's make it clear, why are you here?" Ren Xiaosu thought about it and said, "The position of this assassin is very high. I can't reach it with my height." Ren Xiaosu didn't lie about this. These 4 words were indeed not engraved by him. Last year, he encountered wolves here. When he entered the old Wind Mouth Canyon, the wolves did not chase him. Everyone was stunned when they got here. Didn't they even chase the wolves? Could it be that there is really a big ghost behind this canyon? At this moment, everyone suddenly heard the sound of chewing from the pickup truck, and everyone's hair stood upside down, and everyone looked over in horror. Isn't there only supplies in the pocket of the pickup truck? Where does the sound in the pocket of the pickup truck come from? Su Xianchu and the others slowly approached, but suddenly a black shadow jumped out of the pocket of the pickup truck. Su Xianchu and the others were shocked in their hearts, and they shot before they had time to think about it. It turned out that this black shadow was just a mouse that came to steal food. A false alarm. Everyone is too nervous. The slightest disturbance will make everyone suspicious. At this moment, Su Xianchu called Ren Xiaosu Su's corpse. The parcel belt in the carriage has long been gone, and the relaxed nerves of several people tense up again in an instant, and the inexplicable disappearance of the body has become an unsolved mystery. He is the king of the wilderness in the wasteland. The silver wolf king shines in the moonlight. The silver hair flutters in the wind like a delicate work of art. However, Ren Xiaosu didn't have the idea of appreciating him at all. He just wanted to run now. Hurry up and enter the canyon. Ren Xiaosu rushed to the pickup truck, grabbed the big mouse that was still intact, and ran into the canyon. He is the person who deals with wolves the most. So he knew very well that if they didn't run, then what a terrible opponent they would face. The arrival of the wolves, the flight of the 4 armies at this time. Ren Xiaosu found that he was the most sober in the entire team. Yang Xiaojing and Su Xianchu. Ren Xiaosu didn't get into the car as soon as possible, but he knew from the beginning that he couldn't escape when he got in the car, so he could only find another way. This is a car that passed by Ren Xiaosu and stopped. I saw Yang Xiaojing pointing a gun at the driver's head, and then turned his head and said to Ren Xiaosu, "Get in the car." Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Yang Xiaojing to use a gun to threaten the driver to stop. Can the car outrun the wolf in this broken place? At this time, Yang Xiaojing seemed to see that Ren Xiaosu did not move, and took out a pistol and pointed it at Ren Xiaosu. Stunned, "What are you doing?" After entering the canyon, dozens of huge wild wolves were watching quietly at the mouth of the canyon. They still have freshly stained blood on their hair. They really don't dare go into the canyon. We're saved. Everyone present has a feeling of the aftermath of the catastrophe. At this time, the 4 armies looked at Ren Xiaosu and asked, "Why are you carrying a mouse?" "Eat it," Ren Xiaosu said. "As a matter of course, don't you eat it, and keep it for the new year." The other people who heard this wanted to vomit. "A little they eat my biscuits, I eat them." Reasonable. At this moment, Yang Xiaojing came to Ren Xiaosu's side. A dagger was simply inserted into the body of the mouse. "The food is counted as my share in exchange for the knife. I will lend it to you." As soon as the words fell, a black shadow struck in front of Ren Xiaosu's body, and he took the opportunity to slash it with a knife. Yang Xiaojing's reaction speed was also extremely amazing, and he took a gun to fill the position as soon as he looked up, and there was a dense sound of carapace rubbing above the canyon. Countless black tides are crawling down the walls of the teeth. This insect has never been seen by everyone. The patterns on the back shovel are like human faces. Ren Xiaosu turned his head and yelled, "Okay, life and death." At the moment of life and death, a voice sounded in the palace in Ren Xiaosu's mind. The task is at least to escape from the canyon in the face of these terrible human-faced insects. The team was overwhelmed, and each took care of his own life and fled. Ren Xiaosu got off. The driver closest to him grabbed the driver and held it in his hand. "Wake up. I still need you to drive." Ren Xiaosu jumped into the back of the off-road vehicle. Yang Xiaojing also followed, looking at the driver who was still thinking. Ren Xiaosu yelled at the driver who was already pushing, "You are driving. What are you doing?" In a daze, the driver has completely fallen into a numb mechanical state. When Ren Xiaosu yelled at him, he hurriedly lit a fire and drove forward, and several people breathed a sigh of relief at this time, and there was a chewing sound from the black insect nest, and the blood and flesh were stirred into meat paste in the sharp breath. Ren Xiaosu was silent. It turns out that this is the real wilderness. This is the most terrifying existence in the wilderness. They live on cannibalism. The human face insect was faked because they ate human beings and grew human faces. It's like eating people's souls. Just after Ren Xiaosu's team got rid of the human face worm, the original team of 20 people now has only 11 people left, which can be described as heavy casualties. And it is also the horror of entering the mountain. The seeds of resentment were planted in the hearts of these people. Su Xianchu deliberately concealed the purpose of entering the mountain. It became the fuse for them to kill each other, and the one who aroused all this was Luo Xingren. Ren Xiaosu was watching the excitement. As a result, Yang Xiaojing next to him suddenly said, "I am hungry." This is a pleasure for Ren Xiaosu. "What are you talking to me? When you are hungry, you are not my daughter." I saw Yang Xiaojing stretched out his hand and was about to take back the dagger. This operation made Ren Xiaosu obedient and handed over the mouse he had snatched from the worm's mouth to Ren Xiaosu. And Ren Xiaosu took a dagger and cut it from the mouse, and the whole mouse could only eat 2 back heads. In less than 10 seconds, the smell of meat wafted out more than 10 meters away. Originally, other people were discussing it hotly at this time. They smelled the smell of meat and swallowed their saliva in unison. Everyone quietly turned their heads to look at Ren Xiaosu. I saw that Ren Xiaosu threw the rest of the rat meat into the forest with a shake of his hand. "I'd rather be hungry tomorrow to find food than leave this strong smell of blood by my side, because it's too dangerous." Looking at Miss Yang, who was seasoning on the side, he suddenly thought that the previous study map had been useless. In addition to Yang Xiaojing's mechanical skills, there must be other advantages. The palace. "Can you list all of Yang Xiaojing's skills to me?" "No permission to show it," Gong replied bluntly. "I feel that the palace has improved my IQ." Ren Xiaosu could only ask in a different way, what is the level of his fighting skills compared to his intermediate level? Ren Xiaosu knew that his fighting skills were only the experience he had gained from years of fighting with others, and he had not carefully sorted out the theory and used the learning map. After Ren Xiaosu finished speaking to the palace in his mind, he secretly waited the next moment. The palace said, "Jump the rubber band with the opponent's advanced skills at random." "Do you want to study?" I didn't expect that a perfect level firearms master with clear eyebrows would have such a trick as jumping rubber bands. Yang Xiaojing seemed to feel Ren Xiaosu's gaze and turned his head to look at him calmly. "When will the meat be roasted?" Ren Xiaosu said with a dark face. "You have to bake half more to eat in the wilderness." "Who is it?" "It must be boiled for more than 10 minutes before you can drink it." Looked at Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojing, who had food. The others felt as if their stomachs had been pumped into a vacuum. Su Xianchu asked, "Don't we have anyone to bring something to eat?" Everyone shook their heads. Ren Xiaosu was happy when he saw it. He had clearly seen someone hiding food before. It seems that everyone present understands how things that can save lives can be shared with others at this moment. The palace has sent another task to help the team find food. Ren Xiaosu slowly got up and randomly pointed to a person who was stealing food. Unexpectedly, the mission was completed, and the man got into an argument with the others because he refused to bring out the food. There is a shadow separated from this man's body, which can be used as a bullet, can be used as a stand-in, and the black shadow is like a replica of the body, which is Su Xianchu's extraordinary ability, because of the disagreement in the distribution of food, in order to kill chickens and make an example of monkeys. As a result, Su Xianchu had to use his ability. Su Xian, who had exposed his ability, had no way to retreat at this moment. It is impossible for him to return to the barrier. It is estimated that it will be more auspicious to go back now. He can only explore into the depths of the mountain. No one in the camp was talking, and it seemed like they were all waiting for someone else to decide first. Everyone knows that without the protection of the Transcendentals, even if they don't go into the depths of the mountain, they may not be able to return to the barrier safely because the previous dispute caused one person to be injured. Ren Xiaosu is willing to carry a stretcher because this is an artifact for brushing thank you coins. In just half an hour, Ren Xiaosu's thank you coins reached 82. This dense forest is not easy to walk. The secret book of trees is definitely something that Ren Xiaosu has never seen at this moment. A voice sounded from behind. "Why do you always touch me?" I saw a man say. "What's wrong with touching you? I still want to lick you." The tone was extremely obscene. Hearing Luo Xingyu retreated one after another. Just when the man was proud, a pistol was pressed against his head. It turned out that Yang Xiaojing went over to help. "His gun belongs to you," Yang Xiaojing said to Ren Xiaosu. Looking at Ren Xiaosu's action with the gun, Yang Xiaojing felt extremely familiar. At noon, Su Xianchu asked Ren Xiaosu, "Can you find some food for everyone?" Ren Xiaosu said absent-mindedly, "I am not a god, how can I really find food?" I said that now there is a wild boar hitting the tree. Can there be a wild boar hitting the tree? As soon as the words fell, there was a snoring from a few hundred meters in front of them, as if something really hit the tree, and everyone was stunned. Only Ren Xiaosu knew that this must be Yan Liuyuan's wish again. Su Xianchu took a saber on the side to decompose the pork, and the blood filled the open space. Ren Xiaosu reminded, "Don't keep the things you can't finish eating, and continue to eat them tomorrow." Ren Xiaosu pointed to his feet. "There are already armies of black ants arriving there." Su Xianchu nodded. "Understood. Thank you for reminding you of the wedding dress from Su Xianchu." Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. This Su Xianchu is quite sincere. Just when Ren Xiaosu was eating meat, Luo Xingyu actually sat down next to Ren Xiaosu and said with an innocent and romantic face, "I feel that you can have a good time in the wilderness. It looks romantic." Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, "This is survival. It is not romantic at all." Luo Xingyu ignored Ren Xiaosu's backlash, but suddenly said to Ren Xiaosu, "Do you know that you are very attractive?" Ren Xiaosu frowned. This is a nail in Su Xianchu's place. So I came to find myself. He is a star in the barrier. Luo Xingyu is not only delicate and beautiful, but even his figure is very good. His favorite thing to wear is a short skirt exposing his straight thighs to the air. At this moment, Luo Xingyu was approaching Ren Xiaosu. He exhaled like blue and said, "I like you." Ren Xiaosu's complexion changed greatly. "You should keep your mouth clean." Even Miss Yang, who was drinking water on the side, was choked by the words of the tiger and wolf. And Luo Xingyu never thought that Ren Xiaosu would be like this. Ren Xiaosu sneered in his heart, "Just a woman like Luo Xingyu. Don't waste food if you give it to him for nothing." At this moment, Su Xianchu looked at Ren Xiaosu how to find a water source here. At the same time, the palace also issued a quest to tell teammates how to find water sources in the wilderness, and rely on rivers or roads to collect leaves. Speaking of survival instinct, except for Ren Xiaosu in this team, that is, Su Xianchu and Yang Xiaojing. The last thing he did, he skimmed Yang Xiaojing and said decisively in his mind, "Use the learning map to randomly select the target ultimate skill to make a bomb." Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. He decisively learned this skill, but he couldn't figure it out. What kind of training has Yang Xiaojing received? Why are the skills so violent? Just finished picking pine needles here. The sour fish in the sky also came. Ren Xiaosu found a huge cave suitable for vegetarian drinks. As soon as he arrived at the cave, the team was about to explore it when he heard someone shouting, "You see, someone has carved words here." Ren Xiaosu and Su Xianchu walked inside, and I saw a few lines of words carved into the top of the cave, and we saw strange black shadows in the woods, missing, and they were all gone. When everybody saw these two lines, the atmosphere in the entire cave fell to the ground at once. For the safety of everyone, Su Xianchu proposed that everyone take turns to keep vigil, but I didn't expect it to be late at night. Someone was preparing to sneak attack Yang Xiaojing and Ren Xiaosu after a gunshot. The soldier opposite Yang Xiaojing looked at the blood in his abdomen in disbelief, and the other sneak attacker was also subdued by Ren Xiaosu. Unable to move at all, he didn't try to ask the sneak attacker what the hell was going on. Water gun. Weak heart woman. Ren Xiaosu didn't immediately twist the sneak attacker's neck, just because he wanted to see how Su Xianchu reacted. It's just that at this time, the palace said in his mind the mission is to give the enemy a happy death. This time Ren Xiaosu was really stunned. Isn't this a palace that advocates good people and good deeds? Why is it suddenly so neat and decisive? Pay attention to this dark red shadow and fog top. This is Ren Xiaosu's picture of the big event. The shadow of the supernatural ability that he learned from Su Xianchu at the same time as the sneak attacker task was completed. Ren Xiaosu also became a transcendent in the true sense, looking at the shadow in front of him compared to Su Xianchu's. The color is darker and the gaze is more in order to test the combat effectiveness of Kueing. Ren Xiaosu tried to manipulate Kueing, flashing and moving around the palace, and then he immediately realized. The strength of this shadow seems to be closely related to his own strength. This shadow is twice as strong and fast as Ren Xiaosu. Even the body density is twice that of Ren Xiaosu. No wonder he can resist bullets. In Ren Xiaosu's exploration, he found that the use time of this shadow is determined by mental power, and as long as you are full of energy, you can use it forever. The early morning sun shone on Ren Xiaosu's face. He opened his eyes and looked at the place where he had discarded the body. As soon as he opened his eyes, he wanted to figure out how the body he had promised before disappeared. It was just to his surprise that the three corpses had not changed at all. Su Xianchu had already gotten up and stood outside the cave. He looked at the forest in front of him, and didn't know what he was thinking about for them. I have to find the next place before dark. This was a faint voice behind their ears. Excuse me. Some kind person can help carry me. Ren Xiaosu came to this person and grabbed the bandage on his body with his hand after this person shouted for help. Okay, your injury has already healed. Looking at his waist, his wound was not painful at all. Ren Xiaosu reaped a thank you again. Su Xianchu saw this scene. He was curious to Ren Xiaosu. Do you still have that medicine? No. After speaking, Ren Xiaosu turned around and walked out. I paid for it and paid double the price. Hearing this, Ren Xiaosu's true nature was revealed. Then it was a little bit, but Ren Xiaosu suddenly thought of a question. Aren't you out of money? Su Xianchu said the 3 people who were killed by you have it. I took it out. Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt heartache and couldn't breathe. Is it because of his lack of experience? He didn't even touch the corpse. How could he make such a low-level mistake? Ren Xiaosu said bitterly. This is your money. This is clearly my money, at least half of my score. Su Xianchu thought for a while and said, it is useless for me to ask for money here. As long as you give me that kind of black medicine, I will give you more than 8,000 yuan on my body. However, just as Ren Xiaosu took the more than 8,000 yuan, the palace said in his mind, I detected that the host was carrying enough money for 20,000 yuan. Can be purchased out of the machine storage group line. Ren Xiaosu is very aware of the importance of having a storage space in the wilderness. He gritted his teeth and said to the palace in his mind at this moment of purchase, there is an extra door in the palace. That door slowly opened at this time. Ren Xiaosu saw that there was a wall behind the door. In the middle of the wall, there is a 1-meter-sized lattice. Looking at such a small lattice, Ren Xiaosu scolded me to the garbage palace to deceive me into charging money. Back to my youth. In the absurd end times, the beasts grew in size and humans evolved into transcendent beings. That's because there's a gene in the human body that restricts muscle development, and the brain needs more energy to adapt to the current post-nuclear environment, and this gene prevents the muscles and the brain from competing for resources. It's called the price of wisdom, and Ren Xiaosu and others are exploring the root of evolution. But right now, suddenly, they heard the sound of chains distorting on the ground in the woods, and the chains made a crisp sound when they collided with the ground, and the owner of the sound seemed to be crawling through the woods, inspecting his face. Ren Xiaosu and their hair were damaged and dyed. How can there be creatures that can walk through the woods at night? The people in the cave tried their best to see what was coming, but the problem was that the other party was hidden in the dark and never appeared. There must be other terrifying existences in the woods. Ren Xiaosu said otherwise. It would be impossible to explain the fact that Su Xia's body did not leave a trace when it disappeared. Tonight is destined to be another anxious night. When the first rays of sunlight fell from the sky in the early morning, Ren Xiaosu heard a violent explosion deep in the mountains. This sound came too suddenly, which made Ren Xiaosu startled. This sound does not sound like a volcano. Su Xianchu shook his head. It is more like the sound of explosives for us humans. Ren Xiaosu was already very sure of the sound just now. It was clearly the sound of the directional blasting of the chasing charge. In order to explore the secret of entering the mountain one step ahead of the people, Ren Xiaosu and the others quickened their pace, just walked not much. Su Xianchu said suddenly. There was a human corpse in front of him. Ren Xiaosu looked up and saw a human corpse lying quietly on the ground. In the call, there were broken clothes scattered next to the human valley. There is flesh and blood. There is no decay. This is a corpse that has not been dead for a long time at this time. Ren Xiaosu saw a small nameplate that should have been a sign hanging on the neck of the corpse. In this way, everyone will know who the corpse is after death. But he picked up the nameplate and was stunned. Su Xia, how could this be? Su Xia, you must know that Su Xia's body was lost before they entered the canyon in the past 2 days. They have walked nearly 100 kilometers, to say the least. How could Su Xia's corpse run here by himself? Looking at the silence of the wound on the edge of his abdomen, what beast can bite out such a neat crack? Hearing Ren Xiaosu say this, even Yang Xiaojing and Su Xianchu couldn't help but look at it. It's just that it doesn't matter. Su Xianchu immediately frowned. Grass, this is a human tooth mark, but why are there human tooth marks on the corpse? How can I say that? Ren Xiaosu asked. Is it possible that it was a person who dragged the chain last night? At this moment, everyone understood that they were walking on a tightrope. If you are not careful, you may not recover. And on the other side of the mountain, the ping-pong gunfire is getting more and more intense. And what do you do when you are faced with thousands of people who know you can't do it? When you get closest to the heart of the mountain, Ren Xiaosu, Su Xianchu, and Yang Xiaojing all made the decision to give up their burdens, and the remaining 3 people immediately panicked in the same place. but when they were confused, Luo Xing and them actually heard the sound of chains dragging on the ground. The scalps of the three people suddenly went numb. Lu Bu suddenly turned around and ran. He doesn't care whether the Qingshi consortium will be extinguished now. He just didn't want to die. Lu Bai ran away. The other two also ran as a result, but Lu Bu suddenly found that he was not as fast as Wang Lei and Luo Xingyu. But when Wang Lei overtook him, Lu Bu stretched out his foot to accompany him, and Wang Lei fell heavily to the ground with a bang. Lu Buxin said that he couldn't help it. If you want other people to live, someone must sacrifice. It didn't take long for Wang Lei's terrible cry to tear Lu Bu apart with force, but the scream didn't last long before it stopped abruptly. The sound of chains sounded again, and the monster actually chased after him again. Lu Bu was desperate. He had the heart to pull Luo Xingyu on his back, but he found that Luo Xingyu was already far away from him. Who was it? Lu Bu looked at it, and found that the other party was wearing a pure black combat uniform. Lu Bu shouted, "Monster! There is a monster behind me!" I saw that the consortium fighter made a few tactical gestures, and there were more than 20 fighters on the side, slowly approaching from behind the tree in the direction of Lu Bu's side. This is a complete combat squad. The sound of the chain is getting closer and closer. The moment when the owner of the chain enters everyone's field of vision, fighters suddenly caught fire in their helmets through wireless communication equipment, found the escaped test subject, called for backup, opened fire, and the guns roared like thunder. The test subject didn't seem to want to fight head-on with the powerful combat squad leader, but chose to avoid the edge for the time being, and on the other hand, Ren Xiaosu, who chose to act alone, came to a hillside. Ren Xiaosu also saw a heavily guarded position in the distance. There are some containers stacked there, and there are soldiers next to them injecting some unconscious beasts with drugs, and then carrying them into the containers one by one. Is this the beast caught by the Qingshi Foundation? I'm afraid that these evolved beasts will not escape the fate of being studied at this moment. Ren Xiaosu suddenly saw a young man in a white suit, standing on the roof of a building, overlooking the city, and the spotless white suit on the wilderness made people feel amazing, like a sense of violence and civilization. It's unforgettable. What kind of world it is. Can let a 13-year-old boy shoot and kill in the backyard of the Earthquake Academy? Yin Luyuan was in a particularly good mood at this time because his condition did not deteriorate. That means that there are not many places where Ren Xiaosu can be used luckily. In other words, Ren Xiaosu did not encounter any real danger a few days ago. He had a high fever. Li Xiaoyu could have taken the money and walked away, but he didn't do it. Instead, he wiped Yin Luyuan's face with a towel like his mother to cool down, and when Yin Luyuan was about to go to bed, he heard the sound of someone jumping into the yard, and there was more than one person. Li Xiaoyu also heard this sound. However, Li Xiaoyu, who was usually gentle and cowardly, pulled out the bone knife from under the pillow at this time, and he gritted his teeth and said, "You stay still." In the dim room, Yin Luyuan could even see Li Xiaoyu trembling slightly, and the next moment, 3 strong men dragged open the door of their house, and 2 people tried to hold Li Xiaoyu on the ground. Although Li Xiaoyu was holding a bone knife, the problem was that the strength of one of his women was too far from that of an adult man, and the other person directly held the bone knife and stabbed Yin Luyuan on the bed. Yin Luyuan then looked at the moonlight, and in just an instant, he recognized that these 3 people were all suspects with emergency high-class hands, but he didn't expect them to hit the school. At the same time, Yin Luyuan heard that the door of the next room was also kicked open, as if someone was going to commit murder to Zhang Jingming. These people were so rampant that even the gentlemen of the school dared to move. They're going to kill people so that no one knows who's doing it, and at that moment, a gunshot rang out in the night, and the suspect rushed towards Yin Luyuan, looked at the muzzle of the black hole in front of him in disbelief, and then looked down at the lake where his blood was pouring. He couldn't understand how Yin Luyuan could have a gun in his hand. Everyone in the room looked at Yin Luyuan in surprise. Even Li Xiaoyu didn't expect such a change. In an instant, 6 gunshots rang out in a row, and after Yin Luyuan killed one person, he was not afraid, but shot and killed the 2 suspects who pounced on Li Xiaoyu. Every time Yin Luyuan shot a shot, it was like there was a darkness in his heart that slowly pulled him into the abyss. If you want to live in this world, you have to kill people. The 2 former men next door who had just broken into Zhang Jingming's room ran out when they heard the gunshots, but at this time it was too late. 2 gunshots rang out again. Yin Luyuan actually shot and killed 5 people within a minute. Zhang Jingming stared at Yin Luyuan beside him. As if to get to know this young man again, only by carefully looking at Yin Liyuan's slightly trembling hands can you find that he is also afraid. Li Xiaoyu also came out of the house. He hugged Yin Liyuan. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. When Yin Liyuan was hugged by Li Xiaoyu, he suddenly felt relieved. The coldness on his body was gradually dispelled by another warmth, and because of Yin Liyuan's move, Zhang Jingming was also forced to reveal his identity. He was originally just a professor in an emergency, but in order to keep Yin Liyuan, he did not hesitate to reveal his identity, a simple identity certificate, and let Luo Fatsi come to visit late at night. It turned out that he was the master of the 178 fortress 10 years ago. It was said that he was tired of the war, and came to the emergency outside the barrier where Ren Xiaosu was to become a teacher. At the same time, Roland was gasping and sitting in the back of the SUV. He was on the satellite phone. Hey, Zhang Jingming appeared. The person on the other side of the phone seemed to be silent for a moment, whether it was confirmed or not sure, but if it was true, I want to kill him or not. Roland seemed to be asking for the other party's opinion. Why does this old boy hide in my territory every day? Wang Songyang, who was sitting next to Roland, did not say a word. He did not expect that the two brothers were just a phone call. It decided the life and death of a barrier manager after the young man in a white suit hung up the satellite phone. He looked at Lu Bu and Luo Xing in front of him with a smile. I am the celebrant of Qingshi Luo Lan's younger brother. I am very happy to meet you two guests, Mr. Lu Bu and Miss Luo Xinghe. Under the introduction of Lu Bu, Qing analyzed and recorded the information of Ren Xiaosu and others in detail. He said to the people around him, Su-man, you go and lead the team to find these three people, and you must come back before 12 o'clock at midnight. The soldier named Su-man actually took away 6 combat teams directly and used 180 people to deal with 3 people, which is probably already a very high standard of treatment in the Qingshi Foundation. And Lu Bu and Luo Xinghe were taken away by Qing Quan, but the next moment they were all stunned. They saw a multi-layered reinforced steel ball dragon being carried over, and there was a gray person lying inside. Lu Bujing looked at the person in the ball dragon uncertainly. The gray figure had chains on his arms and legs, and the chains were originally used to imprison this person somewhere, but he broke free. So Lu Bu, the sound of chains they heard that night came from this person. At this moment, Lu Bu remembered Su Xia's broken corpse, and the huge fear and nausea seemed to have been holding Lu Bu's tail with a big hand, pinching everything out of his stomach. It turned out that these things were the field before the transformation. Qing Cheng is going to use this test subject for experiments. How can it be hundreds of years since the transformation is now? Why are they still alive? And this is why Qing Cheng wants to catch them. Multicellular organisms like humans are based on cell division as the basis for growth and reproduction, and it stands to reason that cell division should be infinite, but strangely, all human cells divide an average of 50 times before they come to an abrupt halt and then go to irreversible decay, which is how human aging and death come from. Pay attention, this is the most terrifying existence in the last days. Just to capture him alive, Qing used 5 combat teams, and in exchange for 3 dead and 13 wounded. His teeth have evolved, his pupils are narrow, his habit of crawling is no longer human, and a searchlight hits his face, and as a result, the subject seems to be very afraid of light. Subconsciously put his arm in front of him, obviously afraid of light. Why is he active during the day today? Is it evolving again? Or is there something special that attracts him? Let him rather go out to move in the light. Qingqing now wants to find Ren Xiaosu, and the 3 of them. The reason why the 3 experimental subjects suddenly came out to move during the day. Was it attracted by one of these 3 people at this time? Ren Xiaosu was moving gold bricks in the mall at this time. The benefits of storage space are reflected. How much gold can be held in a cubic space? Most of the gold in the mall is jewelry, and Ren Xiaosu, in order to save space, decisively pinched the gold bracelet and gold necklace into a ball and stuffed it into the palace. If you have a strong hand, you can do whatever you want. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu heard neat footsteps outside the mall. He frowned. This is the person from the Qingshi Consortium who is here at this time. Su-man walked around a corner with the combat team and suddenly stopped. He turned around and said to the people behind him, some of the items in that building were in a different place than I remembered, and someone had been here. Maybe they were still in it. The next moment, the combat troops of the Qingshi Foundation were like black poisonous snakes that quickly swam into the mall. The target escaped to the 2nd floor. Is Ren Xiaosu a fool? Why do you want to run to a dead end? Su-man understood that the young opponent he met was not simple, The other party had a strong survival ability and a very affectionate face. Su-man suddenly remembered that next to this building, there seemed to be a building more than 10 meters adjacent to it, which was a little shorter, and Ren Xiaosu might be able to escape by jumping off the building. Just when he rushed out of the building where he was, he looked up and saw Ren Xiaosu flying over his head. The speed of the young man in the air was amazingly fast. The other party stretched his body to the extreme. Su-man took a deep breath. Target Ren Xiaosu's strength needs to be reassessed. The moment Ren Xiaosu straddled the two buildings when he flew in the air. Suddenly, in the night sky, I saw that there was a broken skyscraper in the front of it, and there was a girl in a rope hat on the fault, and a huge sniper rifle appeared out of thin air in the moonlight. I saw the girl step on the edge of the broken body and put the big sniper on the single leg she was holding up with both hands, and they all said that a woman's mouth is a deceitful ghost, and the more beautiful the woman, the more dangerous it is. Ren Xiaosu looked at Miss Yang, who set up the sniper rifle, and at this time, the muzzle of the gun was aimed at Qingren in the distance. Ren Xiaosu's advanced firearms skills suddenly swirled in his mind. Yang Xiaojing was far away from the young man in a white suit. Long-distance sniping should calculate the wind force, wind direction, humidity, temperature, even consider the direction of the earth and the sky if there is no reference. How to snipe at this time? Not far from Qingzhen's side, Luo Xinyu lowered his head. The long hair hung down from in front of him and kept swaying with the breeze when the wind stopped at a certain moment. Luo Xinyu's hair was also full. Ren Xiaosu suddenly understood that now Luo Xinyu didn't know when he had opened the shackles on his hands. He actually took out a black dagger from his long, thick hair and stabbed at Qingbing, and the white light in the hands of the bodyguards next to him lit up like two fans and strangled towards Luo Xinyu. Luo Xinyu didn't want to kill anyone. He seemed to be just trying to buy Yang Xiaojing a moment. Luo Xinyu just turned around and retreated in a short period of time, and he retreated into a shadow in the building behind him and disappeared. That's Luo Xinyu's ability. I'm afraid even Ren Xiaosu didn't expect that in their team, there was a transcendent person hidden and the one with the best acting skills. This change overwhelmed everyone, but at this time, Qing Cheng suddenly turned his head to look at the skyscraper, and he felt a stabbing shot in the temple. Yang Xiaojing's sniper muzzle gunfire was like a dark night fire, and suddenly bloomed with a touch of blood, and I saw the bodyguard himself blocking in front of Qing Quan, and the two white light fans in his hand were just blocking his chest, and when he hit it, the bullet carrying a huge rotating force collided with the white fan, and the white fan shattered little by little. And then the bullet swept into the muscles and heart, and the bullet that didn't travel thousands of kilometers actually pierced through the abilities and body of this transcendent person one after another, and finally fell to the ground. But until now, Qingchuan was still calm as a normal person. As if the bullet wasn't coming at him, he bent down and picked up the bullet on the ground and said with a smile, "Did the thugs finally target me?" At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was standing on the roof. He looked at this blankly. He never expected that these two people would put on a good show in front of him, and Yang Xiaojing on the other side immediately got up and put away his gun as soon as he couldn't hit it. There was no mud and water in the slightest. The next moment, the muzzle of the sniper rifle turned around, and it was aimed at Ren Xiaosu on the rooftop, and he roared, but this time the gunfire was not amazing. Because Ren Xiaosu stood still and didn't move, the bullet didn't hit him. Ren Xiaosu saw Luo Xingyu, who had just disappeared, appear on top of the skyscraper. He waved his hand at Ren Xiaosu as if to say hello, and then he took Yang Xiaojing's hand and brought Yang Xiaojing into the shadows together. After Yang Xiaojing shared the firepower with a single shot, Ren Xiaosu was forced to flee in the face of more than a dozen combat teams, and he ran frantically towards the woods on the edge of the city. That is the north where the number 112 barrier is located, and it is also the location of the fire volcano deep in the mountain. Seeing that he was about to be discovered, Ren Xiaosu could only shout. Su Xianchu was here, and even summoned a black shadow to confuse the other party after getting rid of Su Nan. Ren Xiaosu also recalled the black shadow at this moment. He knew that the shadow would also feel the injury. And as soon as he arrived in the forest, Ren Xiaosu ran into the test subject, and there was no chain. Ren Xiaosu, who wanted to shoot, suddenly thought that once he shot, he would definitely attract the people who were celebrating the event to come, and it was not pleasant to be hit in front and back. Ren Xiaosu, who had no weapons, was extremely tired in the face of this group of rough-skinned and thick-skinned test subjects, and he really wanted to lure these test subjects to the Qingshi Foundation. However, he was even more worried that those hundreds of people would directly shoot and destroy all living creatures compared to the hundreds of people in the Qingshi Foundation. Ren Xiaosu was more willing to face these 4 test subjects. Suddenly, there was a piercing pain from Ren Xiaosu's body, and the tearing sensation from the bone marrow made him feel sorry all over, and his muscles trembled, and he saw that the shadow was entangled by 3 experimental subjects, and the experimental subjects frantically tore away the shadow's body. One of the subjects even bit down on Shadow's waist. Ren Xiaosu's eyes were red, and he endured severe pain, almost crying. Ren Xiaosu needs a weapon, even if he only has 93 thank you coins now. He said to the palace, "Give me a weapon now. I have not reached the permission to unlock the weapon." The next moment Ren Xiaosu laughed palely. "Isn't it just going to be thanked 7 times?" he said calmly in his mind. "I want to thank myself 7 times. The first time I thank myself for never being timid in the face of opportunity, and the second time I thank myself for never being afraid in the face of danger. The third time, I thanked myself for never compromising in the face of tribulation. The fourth time, I thanked myself for always having a bottom line in the face of temptation." Ren Xiaosu's voice in my head grew louder and louder. "The 5th time, I thanked myself for never being hypocritical. The 6th time, I thanked myself for not being sober. Never hesitate. For the 7th time, I thanked myself for singing all the way through the mysteries of life, overcoming thorns." And the palace was silent for a moment. "Thank you from Ren Xiaosu has obtained the permission to unlock the weapon." "Whether to unlock?" Ren Xiaosu roared. Suddenly, the lock on time seemed to melt and disintegrate. Ren Xiaosu quietly looked at the experimental object in front of him, and he grabbed it with his palm in the void. As if to hold the inexplicable power, a knife splits the road of life and death, and thousands of troops and horses do not look back. A black knife suddenly appeared in Ren Xiaosu's hand. There was a bang, and the sound of sharp energy cutting through the leather appeared so abruptly in the woods that the original extremely murderous test subject was directly split into 2 pieces in front of this black knife. There was a blank look in the subject's eyes, as if he couldn't understand where the knife in Ren Xiaosu's hand came from, and he couldn't understand why this knife was the end. The moment Ren Xiaosu held the knife from the void, the shadow also had an extra knife in his hand. Ren Xiaosu decided to take the last step. A sword step rushed forward and cooperated with the shadow to easily complete this wave of harvesting. Ren Xiaosu stood in place and stared at the knight in front of him. The pain that had brought him was still stimulating his nerves, but for the first time, he felt the arena of the battle. It turns out that this is the transcendent at this time. The palace said, "Open side quest 2, get 1,000 thank you coins, and unlock the ultimate form of the weapon." After all, the battle between Ren Xiaosu and the experimental subject still attracted the Qingshi Consortium. The Qingshi Consortium, led by Su Man, quickly moved closer to the location of the incident, only to Su Man's disappointment was that when they arrived at the battlefield, the target has disappeared. Su Man looked down at the traces on the ground. There is only one kind of footprint on the shoe, indicating that there is only one person fighting. This also surprised Su Man. Could it be that he defeated 4 test subjects alone? He turned on the public communication channel and said, "Boss Su Xinchu's ability needs to be re-evaluated," and sent a person to kill the 4 test subjects. But at this moment, Su Man suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps 100 meters away from the side. It seemed that someone was running wildly. He was about to hit the beam of the tactical flashlight and found that it was Ren Xiaosu who was running away. Su Man was stunned for a moment. What is the situation? How will Su Xianchu run back? Didn't they all run away before? However, Ren Xiaosu was anxious when he heard the sound of the gun being loaded from a distance. "Why are you going to hit me? Look behind me." Su Man looked behind Ren Xiaosu suspiciously and saw that the black shadows in the woods were moving, and the sound of iron chains was dense, and Su Man's whole person was suddenly not good. "Are you going to poke the old nest of the experimental subject?" After seeing this scene, his first reaction was read in the communication channel. "Pay attention to the direction of the city and build a defense line." Fortunately, there are many people in the woods in the consortium. However, it seems that there are more test subjects than them. However, at this moment, Su Man actually gave priority to notifying the city to purchase a defensive line instead of giving the order to evacuate. Ren Xiaosu ran wildly while watching the combat squad of the Qingshi Foundation from a distance. He was a little shocked in his heart, Could it be that this is the difference between the fighters of the consortium and the private army, and the soldiers of these consortiums are willing to sacrifice their lives and safety to fight for the incident for their comrades behind them? How could the young man in the white suit be able to lead such a force? This is a terrifying existence than an experimental subject in the post-apocalyptic era. A huge claw in the volcano grabbed the edge of the crater. It seems that he wants to climb out of there. Is there any creature hidden in the volcano? What kind of creature can swim and survive in the magma? Ren Xiaosu happened to encounter a volcanic eruption when he was escaping. And at the same time, Qingjin also saw this scene, and he sighed. This kind of thing really exists, and the mission of temporarily withdrawing from the west from Jingshan failed. The heat wave caused by the volcanic eruption has begun to sweep across the entire Jingshan mountain range. You must know that there is more than one volcano in Jingshan. When Su Man retreated from the edge of the forest into the city, Qingjin suddenly pressed the remote control in his hand. In an instant, the phenomenon of dividing the forest and the city was ignited by a line of fire. Turned out that Qingjin had planted explosives there a long time ago and detonated it, completely blocking the experimental subject in the north of the woods. But at this moment, there were fighters in front of me shouting, "Oh no, our car can't drive. You come and look at the tires." Su Man was stunned for a moment. Did the tires burst? We brought a jack and a machine to repair the tires. To cheer up, just make up for it. The man said with a bitter face, "It's not that the tire burst. It's that our tire was cut off." Qingjin, who was originally calm, slowly stiffened on his face. This is the first time he wants to kill someone like this. On Ren Xiaosu's way south back to Barrier 113, the most dangerous thing was not the test subject, but the human-faced insects and wolves, and he spent all the way on the back of the shadow to recuperate, and the shadow seemed to be walking in the air. His legs and feet were so fast that he almost pulled out the afterimage, and he went back to the cave where they were staying one night, and found that there was already a line of handsome boys on the top of the cave, and he was behind you. Ren Xiaosu remembered that Yang Xiaojing was left behind when he set off that day. I don't know why he felt when he looked at this graceful posture. I am afraid that Yang Xiaojing deliberately carved it to scare people late when he came. It was very slow, but when he went back, it was very fast. It only took half a day for Ren Xiaosu to come to the front of the canyon. He looked at the canyon in front of him and the glimmer of sky on the cliff of the canyon. Ren Xiaosu no longer hesitated as long as the speed is fast enough. The human face insects, wolves, and loneliness will not be able to catch up with him. Ren Xiaosu, the shadow under Ren Xiaosu swept through the canyon like a gust of wind. The human face insects on the cliff felt the breath of the human beings and swarmed out, but they had just come out. Ren Xiaosu had already run out of the canyon. The wolves stopped and quietly looked at the back of Ren Xiaosu leaving. And I don't know how Yin Luyuan and Sister Xiaoyu are at home. Ren Xiaosu is like an arrow at the moment. If you get up 15 minutes early every day, you will have more than 90 hours a year, and these hours can be used to do what you like. This is what Li Xiaoyu said to Yin Luyuan, but Yin Luyuan said that his favorite thing is to sleep. After Zhang Jingming left, Yin Luyuan and Li Xiaoyu's life was very stable, and the stable Yin Luyuan often thought of Ren Xiaosu. At this time, I also happened to meet Wang Fuguwei to deliver sweet potatoes. He brought the latest news to Yin Luyuan. The Jingshan volcano erupted. Yin Luyuan said calmly, "My brother must be okay after all." Yin Luyuan's wish is to use his life to bless Ren Xiaosu to return safely. He is not dead now. That means that Ren Xiaosu must be okay at this time. Wang Fuguwei lowered his voice and said to Yin Luyuan and Li Xiaoyu, "You guys should be careful lately. If you want to leave the emergency, just tell me, and I'll help you find a way. I think these people outside may not be coming for you, but for Ren Xiaosu, and they want to arrest Ren Xiaosu. Why?" Sister Xiaoyu almost exclaimed. Wang Fuguwei thought for a long time, and suddenly said, "Don't let Xiaosu give Huahua to the pair of people in the quiet mountain again." However, the vision still shows Wang Fuguwei's imagination. Ren Xiaosu is not only Huahua Sijun and those people, but also Huahua Qing Foundation. At this time, Qing Zhan was standing on a certain hillside with a helpless look. This is not going to go back to 112B. Just as Wang Fuguwei and the others were talking, they suddenly heard an uproar in the emergency. There are a lot of strange bugs running out of the mountain, and the bugs have a human face on their carapace, and they eat people. Suddenly, Yin Luyuan heard someone jumping into the courtyard behind him. He turned around and was pleasantly surprised to see Ren Xiaosu signaling them not to speak. Ren Xiaosu lowered his voice and said, "Pack up your things quickly." Wang Fuguwei saw Ren Xiaosu holding a gun in his hand and pointed at himself. Lao Wang, you are here to take us away. I can't help it. Wang Fugui smiled bitterly. You are going to leave. There are many people outside staring at this courtyard. Maybe you can easily enter and exit by yourself. But what about Yin Luyuan and Li Xiaoyu? Ren Xiaosu looked confident. Which of these people are their opponents? In fact, Mr. Zhang should not do anything to you during the celebration. At this time, Ren Xiaosu found out that Zhang Jinglin was not in the school. He didn't know what happened in the school before, but it would be too late to say so much. Ren Xiaosu said, I didn't want to leave because of the celebration consortium, but those demons and monsters in the mountains were about to come out, and Wang Fugui, who heard this, was not calm. Directly begged Ren Xiaosu to take him and his son with. Ren Xiaosu never considered that Wang Fugui would go with him because his family business was here. However, Wang Fugui's idea was the opposite. Now he has a very sober understanding. Only Ren Xiaosu knows best what happened inside the mountain. This is a person who has personally experienced the history of entering the mountains. If he doesn't believe him, then who else can he believe? To tell the truth, Ren Xiaosu was also thinking about whether he could escape with Wang Fugui. Wang Fugui, a shrewd profiteer, seemed to see Ren Xiaosu's doubts. I don't follow you in vain. First of all, I have money and medicine. Secondly, my ability to deal with people is stronger than all of you. I am not a useless waste. After promising Wang Fugui Yin, Luyuan told me about the previous things in the school, took out the gold coins left by Zhang Jinglin, and said that when he was desperate, he could go to Saibei to find him. Walls have risen from the wasteland, symbols of the new human order in the last days, and witnesses to the collapse of the old order, but such a strong fortress has changed on this day. There was a huge black line that was spreading rapidly in the middle of the time, and it came from the direction of the silent mountain, and then it pierced straight into the barrier like a knife, and the round, tiny wall made an iceberg-like sound. Even the solid walls began to have delicate cracks from the bottom up, and the cracks did not form an abyss, but forcibly divided the wall into two semicircles, east and west. The wall really collapsed. Ren Xiaosu once talked to Yin Luyuan about a topic: what would happen if this wall guarding humanity collapsed, but now it's really not the time for this wall to collapse. The monster outside the wall has arrived. Ren Xiaosu kept shooting to help stop the human face insect that came. The next moment Ren Xiaosu turned around, and he saw a huge water bubble floating towards the human face insect in the sky. Then the blisters burst open, pushing the hive back more than 10 meters, and some of the bugs in front of it seemed to have been blown up, and others might not know what they were. But Ren Xiaosu thought of Zhang Ma, who was caught in the barrier in an instant. Wang Fugui's son Wang Dalong forced me to say, if only I were also an extraordinary person, Yin Luyuan said casually. It may take some conditions such as luck or blood poison, or something like that. Wang Dalong became depressed. Then my father is not an extraordinary person, Yin Luyuan comforted. Don't be too desperate. Maybe he is not your own father. Hearing this, Wang Dalong, who didn't cry even if his love died, cried out all his life because of the collective divorce of the human face worm and the wolf pack. Most of the fugitives fought in the direction of Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu in the distance was sitting in the Pythagorean voyage to add firewood to them because they were far away. They didn't hear the sound of wolves howling at all. Ren Xiaosu watched these people run and cursed to go quickly. Those who escaped are likely to attract danger. As well, as soon as the words fell, Ren Xiaosu suddenly heard the sound of the car engine behind him. He was stunned for a moment. How can there be a car here? The sound of the engine was like the roar of a wild beast. Immediately after that, Ren Xiaosu suddenly reacted. This is an escape from the barrier. Roland sat in the SUV and gasped. The most embarrassing thing is that he only has a big tint on his lap at this moment. Roland's biggest worry is that he has not yet reached the 109 location. What if the car is not there at that time? He has to get out of the car and walk to the 109 location. The soldier was embarrassed and asked for a man from an SUV behind him to go to the truck so that we could direct the fuel from that car to our car. Roland's eyes lit up in the face of the soldier's proposal, but then he sighed. Forget it, the off-road vehicles are full of wounded. Ren Xiaosu looked at the convoy coming from afar. He guessed that there must be many people in the barrier who fled in this direction. He decided to use these people to attract the fire of the beast. If you still have money to study, will you cherish the time you spend studying? Ren Xiaosu met this group of students on the way to the 109 barrier. He had heard Zhang Jingming say it before. There are dozens of schools in the barriers, and there are a lot of teachers who teach them the basics, and they can receive student subsidies without having to work. and it would be nice to be born in the walls themselves. And look at this group of students. Ren Xiaosu suddenly remembered the second stage of the task of unlocking weapons, because most of the thank you coins in the first stage were students who relied on urgent certificates. Now think about it. The Underworld Junior is so powerful. After the next level is unlocked, it is not for the purpose, so he immediately underestimated on the side. Thank yourself for not killing innocents. Thank yourself for pulling 6 yuan into such a big thank you for eating grapes and not spitting out grape skins. This operation looks like a word of 6 yuan and 1, but the palace did not react. This is a student who whispered Teacher Jiang Wu. I am so hungry. The female teacher named Jiang Wu was embarrassed. Let's go further. Maybe there will be something to eat. The people of the 109 barrier may come to save people. I really don't want to ask the teacher to pick some wild vegetables for you, teacher. What do wild vegetables look like? We can go and pick it up, a male student said curiously. Jiang Wu is not stupid. He secretly pointed at Ren Xiaosu and the others, and then whispered to the students, you see these people in front of us. They are more powerful at a glance. Wait for what they pick. Let's pick what we eat. Sister Xiaoyu looked back at Jiang Wu's group of people and whispered to Ren Xiaosu, there are many beautiful girls in the group of students in the back. Sister, go and help you talk about it. At this time, someone will tell you if you have something to eat. Ren Xiaosu couldn't stop crying and laughing at this time. He suddenly saw that the plant on the side of the road was like his eyes. He walked to the side of the road and uprooted a whole tree. Seeing this scene, Jiang Wu hurriedly whispered to the students, go. Just look for the same plant in his hand. The students were already very hungry, so they rushed to the side of the road immediately. At this time, Ren Xiaosu said to Wang Fuguwei, this plant must not be eaten. I ate it once the year before last and had a stomach that I pulled for 3 days. Jiang Wu and the students were speechless when they heard this. Threw away the plants that had just been pulled out in their hands. It was only then that Ren Xiaosu found that this group of students were learning from him. He thought about it, and suddenly said to Wang Fuguwei, the small layer of plants at your feet is called pillow grass. You can eat Mingjiji vegetables if you eat them raw. It may be a little bitter because of the relationship between plant alkalis, but what is the bitterness compared to life? Jiang Wu glanced at Ren Xiaosu, because he has been observing Ren Xiaosu's origins. So he knew very well why Ren Xiaosu suddenly said this. Yin Luyuan said next to Ren Xiaosu, brother, did you take a fancy to that female teacher? It's very beautiful. Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps and voices on the road when they came, and I heard someone shouting over there, and there must have been a living person in the fire. In the treacherous wilderness, this man single-handedly fought his way through the wilderness, leading the refugees to find the large army, and wearing a blue and white striped shirt made him stand out. His name is Chan Wuving, and he calls himself the Monkey King, and it is his mission to subdue demons and eliminate demons and protect the people. But the font on the back of the blouse makes one suspect that he's mentally ill, but he can actually conjure a stick out of thin air, and he's powerful, and he's a proper transcendent. Ren Xiaosu looked at Chen Wushu with interest. He is now very interested in all transcendent beings. It's just that Chen Wui's gaze swept around the crowd. When he saw Ren Xiaosu, his expression changed, and his eyes seemed to be overflowing with extreme joy. So let Chen Wushu squeeze through the crowd and walk towards Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu suddenly had an ominous premonition. Yin Luyuan asked in a low voice, brother, do you know him? Chen Wushu is getting closer and closer to Ren Xiaosu. Finally, he walked in front of Ren Xiaosu before he finally stood up. His eyes were blazing, and he looked at Ren Xiaosu. Is Chen Wushu surprised? I saw Chen Wushu turn around and shout to those who were with him, I have found the master. Take care of yourselves. I want to escort him to the West Heaven to learn scriptures. This sentence made everyone speechless. Wang Fuguwei on the side was almost stupid when he heard this. However, at this moment, Chen Wudi turned his head to look at Wang Fuguwei. Bajia, what are you laughing at? Wang Fuguwei's smile stopped abruptly. Chen Wudi didn't care about him, but continued to look at Wang Dalong and said with a smile, Sha Sung, you are also here. Great. Great. Wang Dalong suddenly felt that he understood fiercely. There seems to be a change in the relationship between himself and his father. The original father and son suddenly became brothers. Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt a little melancholy. I am going to the West to learn the scriptures, a turning point in my life. It was so sudden. Ren Xiaosu looked at Chen Wudi squarely. I have to explain, I am not your master. I will not go to the West Heaven to learn the scriptures. Chen Wudi shook his head. Master, which direction are you going in now? Southwest. Chen Wushu said solemnly. The West Heaven is also in the southwest. Master, you yourself haven't realized it yet, but you are already on the way to learn the scriptures in the West Heaven. What is this? What is it? Ren Xiaosu was stunned by others for the first time. At this moment, Wang Yiheng and the others came over, and he said to the group of students, "Hand over all the previous things on your body." He was still paying attention to Ren Xiaosu's side as he spoke. However, when he swept over Ren Xiaosu and them, he was suddenly stunned, only to see a black and gold iron steel in Chen Wuving's hand, and before he could react, I saw that Chen Wudi had already struck him with a stick. Wang Yiheng subconsciously became hurriedly withdrew the gun. There was a gunshot, and the muzzle of the gun burst out of flames. Just everyone in the room was stunned. Chen Wushu put his golden hoop stick across his chest. He smiled and said, "My golden hoop stick bullet can't be pierced." Yan Luyuan was curious next to him, "But the bullet didn't hit your golden hoop stick. Your chest is bleeding." Chen Wui glanced down at his chest, then took a deep breath and said, "This man has a copper head and an iron arm that is invulnerable, and he only needs to imagine that he is a monkey king in his mind, and he can have the corresponding ability." Just now, Chen Wushu squeezed the bullet out of his body. Wang Yiheng gritted his teeth and wanted to shoot again, and the next moment, the golden hoop stick vibrated in the air, making a buzzing sound, and slammed into Wang Yiheng's waist with a thud. Wang Yiheng's whole person showed an irregular cooling feeling from his waist. This stick actually hit Wang Yiheng's spine directly. With a sound from the east, Chen Wushu smashed the golden hoop stick on the ground, and he himself helped the stick and stood majestic. "Master, am I handsome or not?" Ren Xiaosu, who watched this scene, didn't know how to answer for a long time since the homeless people had been robbed by Wang Yiheng before. Everyone came to thank Chen Wudi. "Thank me for what are you doing?" Chen Wudi waved his hand nonchalantly. "Thank my master this time." Ren Xiaosu received more than a dozen thank you gifts in vain. Originally, he was still worried about how to collect thanks. "I didn't expect that I didn't do anything." Chen Wudi helped him get so much. "The apprentice's wound still hurts. Master has the best medicine for injuries to treat external injuries." Everyone was speechless for a while. "This is really going to the West Heaven to learn the scriptures." Let Wang Fugue take out a nest head and hand it to Chen Wushu, and Ren Xiaosu thought about everyone's extraordinary ability. It seems that they are all more or less related to spiritual will. For example, Su Xian's shadow combat strength is directly related to spiritual power, and this Chen Wushu is even more obvious. Fantasizing that he is a monkey king, he has actually embodied the golden hoop stick, and his physical fitness is gradually approaching an inhuman state, but he still has no clear answer. When he was thinking about it, the Jianghu took the students to Ren Xiaosu and asked, "Can you catch the fire?" Ren Xiaosu looked at them happily. For these people who have no experience in wilderness survival, it is really not easy to survive in this environment when everyone is asleep. Ren Xiaosu thought about what to do in the future by himself. If he can enter the 109 barrier, it will be the best. The gold in his hand and the medicine brought by Lao Wang should be enough for them to gain a foothold. But if you can't get in, you're going to have to live in the emergency room outside the 109 barrier, and the next morning, many people get up from the ground and feel like they don't have the strength to do it. And there is still soreness in the body after they traveled a long way. The price of being contaminated with wind and cold completely exploded. "Let's go quickly." Ren Xiaosu got up and glanced around. An area of incidents has already formed here. If you don't leave quickly, I'm afraid you will be infected. But Chen Wushu is unwilling to give up these homeless people. The master saves people's lives and makes a 7th-level floating slaughter. Ren Xiaosu said as he walked, "I want to go to the West Heaven to learn scriptures. If you want to stay, stay." Chen Wudi was stunned for a moment. He tore it for a long time before he finally followed, and it seemed that for him, escorting the master to the West Heaven to learn scriptures should be a more priority. Seeing that Ren Xiaosu and his party were about to leave, Jianghu immediately organized the students to prepare to follow. "Anyway, what is Ren Xiaosu doing now? What are the rivers and lakes taking the students to do?" He said that he is the reincarnation of Monkey King. He has only 2 wishes in this life. In addition to escorting Ren Xiaosu to learn the scriptures, he also wants to find Zixia. Ren Xiaosu met Luo Fatsi on the way to the 109 barrier. Seeing that many soldiers in the Qingshi Foundation were wearing bandages, it seems that they were injured when they escaped from the barrier. It's just that Ren Xiaosu was a little curious. This Roland didn't leave the soldiers behind and ran away. This surprised him. Ren Xiaosu also found a place to rest next to the Qingshi Foundation at night. At this stage, it should be safer to follow the large army. Ren Xiaosu was worried that if he broke away from the team, The wolves would pick up soft persimmon noodles, then he went to pick up dry firewood as usual and brought Chinwushu with him. So there was the beginning of the scene. Just half of the pickup. Jiangwu took the students to pick up a lot of dry firewood, as the so-called number of people is powerful. Jiangwu took 28 students to pick up dry firewood, and the efficiency is much higher than Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu nodded and did not refuse. It is a good thing for the other party to have the heart to reciprocate. He doesn't mind accepting the other party's return. I saw a few female students blushing, and looking at Chinwudi, a few of them walked over hesitantly. Suddenly said to Chinwudi, "You are so handsome." Chinwudi was stunned for a moment and replied, "Thank you, female donor." These 3 words are like a basin of cold water, which extinguished the thoughts of the girl Huichuan at once, but Ren Xiaosu ignored them and walked towards the front still. As he walked, he shouted, "Come on, come on. I found something good. The sweet potato in front of me can guarantee that you don't have to worry about food problems for the next few days. It doesn't seem that this night is so difficult." Thousands of people gathered around their respective campfires to keep warm, and countless sweet potatoes were thrown in the bonfires. Gradually, the entire camp was filled with an intoxicating sweet smell. Chinwudi looked at the circle of people around him and said to Ren Xiaosu, "Master, do you think our team still has any shortcomings?" Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. What is missing? Chenwui's eyes wandered back and forth between Yin Luyuan and Li Xiaoyu. There is still a lack of a white dragon horse. Yin Luyuan and Li Xiaoyu were not good at that time. Ren Xiaosu felt a little melancholy in his heart. His team was originally quite normal. Why did Chinwudi suddenly change his painting style after he came in? The students have passed the stage of homesickness and vulnerability. These flowers in the greenhouse are learning to be strong. Someone suddenly asked, "Teacher, we can really go to 109B safely?" "It must be able," Zhang Hu said. "Let's just follow that young man. We will definitely be able at this time." There were a few students who reminded Zhang Hu to look behind him. Zhang Hu turned his head and happened to see Ren Xiaosu's gaze. He quickly turned his face back. It seems that the bonfire is burning so hard that his cheeks are extremely red. In the distance at the Qingshi Foundation station, Roland smells the sweet potato that has been picked up from afar. He eats the head of the individual soldier stored in the car by the combat brigade. While sighing that this group of poor people will live, you may not know how fragrant the sweet potatoes in mochi are. Wang Fugue ate it once when he was a child and thought it was the most delicious thing in the world. And now Roland smelled the intoxicating sweet smell, instantly felt that the canned food in front of him was not fragrant, threatened to buy it at 50 times the price. After seeing his subordinates go away, Roland sighed, "I didn't expect that I would be a hero." Now it has been reduced to begging for food from the refugees. It didn't take long for Tangzhou to bring people back with a large pile of sweet potatoes. Roland counted the number of people and counted the number of sweet potatoes. Then he sighed and said, "One person eats half of it. No one can eat more. The merchant can eat a whole," and throw all the sweet potatoes into the fire, and then a group of big men also waited. After it was baked, Tangzhou took a wooden stick and pulled one out of the fire for Roland. Roland picked it up and broke half of it for Tang. "Zhou, half of it for one person." "Don't do it, boss." Tang Zhou was a little hesitant. "You only eat half of it. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and take the hot hand." Roland looked at the others. "I don't have time to tell you so much now. Wait until we get to 109. I invite everyone to enjoy it. All of them have escaped the great calamity, will not die. There will be a blessing." The soldiers of the combat brigade were silently eating sweet potatoes and did not speak at this time. A woman among the refugees suddenly screamed. Then a loud slap sounded. It turned out that the woman had eaten the sweet potato dug by the man, and in a fit of anger, she actually pulled the woman to the secluded wilderness, and the woman cried and screamed but was powerless to struggle, and everyone else was watching indifferently. However, at this time, a burst of shouts suddenly sounded next to Ren Xiaosu. "Stop. It turns out that you are the money who is dying," and this sound made Ren Xiaosu's brain buzz. He looked at Chinwudi with a fierce face, and saw that Chinwushu had already rushed out with a golden hoop stick, and the middle-aged man didn't react, and was directly thrown to the ground by Chen Wuving's stick, almost vomiting blood. But before Chinwudi could enjoy the sense of accomplishment of wanting to get rid of the demon, the woman who was dragged out at the beginning was angry. He looked at Chinwudi. "Why did you beat him?" "You care." That Chinwushu was a little aggrieved, but he couldn't understand what was going on. He could only walk back to Ren Xiaosu with his head. "This Chinwudi wants to fight whom? We'll arrange a goblin name for each other when you don't want to fight." The other party is a normal human. Ren Xiaosu watched Chen Wushu return to his side. He thought for a long time and teased invincible if you encounter hundreds of enemies one after another in the future. What if the monster name is not enough? Chen Wudi fell into deep contemplation, but he didn't say it again. It's okay, the name of the monster can be reused. Is this really stupid or fake stupid? Say it so don't admit it. Just when a few people were laughing, there was a faint sound of iron chains cutting across the ground behind them, and the sound was getting tighter and tighter. Run! Ren Xiaosu roared in a low voice among the countless refugees. He was probably the only one who knew what was behind him. Across the street, the sound of chains in the woods was getting louder and louder, and when everyone looked back, they saw the test subject crawling rapidly on the ground like a spider. Like ghosts. It wasn't until this moment that they began to scream in horror, and then fled frantically. Ren Xiaosu ran wildly with the team, while yelling at the Qingshi Foundation from a distance. Don't shoot and run together. He was worried that the Qingshi Foundation would shoot everyone indiscriminately. Ren Xiaosu frowned at this time. If the Qingshi Foundation made an attack posture, then he could only use the shadow to forcibly kill it. At this moment, the Qingshi Foundation had already discovered the chaos, and although the refugees blocked their vision, they did not know what was going on. But at this juncture of chaos, Roland did not. He directly ordered all the combatants of the Qingshi Consortium to evacuate quickly, and the screams behind him were getting closer and closer. In order to protect his merchants, Roland ordered Tang Zhou to leave first with the team. He stayed to buy time for them. Looking at Roland's heroic appearance, the merchants under him were silent. Tang Zhou also made the right choice at this time. Why are you still stunned? Protect the boss and leave. He chose these two soldiers to give them a way to live, because they were too young to enjoy their lives, and the other soldiers were silent, and they knew the consequences of staying. But no one stood up against Tang Zhou's decision. Then the remaining soldiers moved out the weapons at the bottom of the box. Tang Zhou knelt down on one knee and carried the RPG rocket launcher to his shoulder the moment the first test subject appeared in his field of vision. Tang Zhou was calm enough to open fire. With a bang, grenades erupted from his shoulders, and the power that burst out in that instant. It was like a roar from the gods hitting the ground vertically from the human world, and some experimental subjects bypassed the side of the position of the Qin City Consortium at this moment. Ren Xiaosu knew that Tang Zhou and they were finished. Even if they have powerful thermal weapons, once this line of defense is broken through by the experimental subjects, there will be no survivors of the combatants of the Qin City Consortium. Ren Xiaosu can no longer care about this scene, because at this time, there were still 4 experimental subjects that surrounded them, and they had already pounced on Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu yelled, "Chen Wudi, you go to the right." As soon as the words fell, Ren Xiaosu's hand was already holding the black knife in the void. The black knife seemed to be pulled out of the void in the hospitality room. The non-knife met the experimental subject who pounced on the left. The body of the experimental subject was cut off by the non-knife like tofu. Chen Wushu looked at Ren Xiaosu and suddenly whispered, "Master is so murderous in this life, but it seems to be much stronger than the indecisive appearance in the previous life." Ren Xiaosu raised the knife in his hand, and then shouted at Wang Fuguwei and the others, "You run forward first." Ren Xiaosu saw that they didn't react and became angry. Run. At this time, Yin Luyuan was the first to react. "Go, don't stay here, and become my brother's Lei Zhuan." After the words, Ren Xiaosu saw that Yin Luyuan and they began to flee with their lives, and they were a little relieved, but the crisis was not really solved. The golden hoop stick in Chen Wuving's hand came out of the giant. The idea of cutting off the waist and eliminating the demon in his heart moved stupidly. The two of them killed together. The test subject was harvested like a leek under Ren Xiaosu's knife at this time. He looked at Chen Wui's side and was stunned. I saw that the 2 test subjects that Chen Wudi was facing were already lying on the ground, and Chen Wudi himself stepped on the test subjects with one leg and carried the golden hoop stick on his shoulder with one hand. The clothes feel very awesome. This surprised Ren Xiaosu because he didn't block the bullet before. Ren Xiaosu subconsciously felt that Chen Wushu might not be so powerful. But now that I look at it, I am afraid that the other party's force value is much higher than I imagined. I just heard Chen Wudi say, from now on, 10,000 years later, you will all remember my name. My name is Ren Xiaosu. Interrupted by good anger. Don't talk. Suddenly Ren Xiaosu heard someone shouting. The sound came from the overturned off-road vehicle and roared. Roland, who was sitting in the car with the Qingshi Foundation, was looking at Ren Xiaosu and begging them to save him. Ren Xiaosu dragged Roland out of the car and hurried away. The test subject was about to break through the defense line as a result. After saying this, Roland broke free from Ren Xiaosu and looked blankly at Tang Zhou. They were already about to be overwhelmed by the test subject. However, just as Ren Xiaosu and the others were about to leave, a wolf howl suddenly came from afar and rose into the sky. This wolf howl was particularly abrupt at this time. Ren Xiaosu's heart sank. Could it be worse? It's just that, to his surprise, when the wolf howl appeared, those experimental subjects gradually stopped and all left the battlefield in just 1 minute. Ren Xiaosu stood in place and watched this scene. He was a little puzzled. Could it be that these experimental subjects are afraid of wolves? Seeing the withdrawal of the experimental subjects, let Chen Wushu go and call for help. Wang Fuguwei. Ren Xiaosu followed Luo Lan and returned to the Qingshi Foundation. Boss, why are you back? Tang Zhou lay down and gasped. You hurry up and leave. They may come back soon. Roland squatted beside Tang Zhou. He glanced around. The soldiers in the barrier have died more than 90%. Do you have anything to explain? Tang Zhou smiled. Boss, you said that the 109 barrier will take us to experience the world of flowers. We are afraid that we will not be able to go when the time comes. Boss, you will come back for us. Roland is a little melancholy. Then I am afraid that I will be exhausted to death in the 109 barrier. The two of them suddenly laughed, as if they had told some funny joke at this time. Tang Zhou suddenly said, we don't regret it. Roland replied in a low voice. Ren Xiaosu looked at the two big men from the side and couldn't help it. You don't actually have to die, just take out the small bottle. I want to treat trauma is a must. Ren Xiaosu looked at Roland. In return, I want you to take us into the 109 barrier to obtain legal resident status. And Roland stared at the black medicine in Ren Xiaosu's hand. This time, the bottle had a sense of déjà vu. Roland's expression gradually changed from calm to shocked. This can also cure trauma. Wait if you wait. You are a wonderful hand to rejuvenate Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu relied on his black medicine to cure Roland's subordinates at the same time. He also exchanged the right of residence for a group of people in the same company. On the way to the 109 barrier together, Roland looked at Chen Wuving, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He finally remembered who Chen Wuver was, and at this moment, Roland also figured out one thing: who killed the test subject before. Chen Wudi looked at Roland. He hadn't looked at Roland carefully before now. Chen Wudi recognized Roland. It's you running around. Hearing this name, Roland was not good at that time. You crazy, don't talk nonsense. Who is running around? Chen Wudi glanced at Roland. Unhappily, call me the Seven Heavens Great Sage after trouble. Roland is not angry. What about your master? This is Ren Xiaosu looking at Roland. I am his master. I am Beiji. I am Sha Song. Hearing this, Roland slammed on the spot. It didn't take long for them to run into a few cars blocking the road, and the body was in tatters. Ren Xiaosu, they didn't see the corpse, and the blood stains on the ground had dried up. Judging from the color of the blood stains, this battle took place about half a day ago. Ren Xiaosu saw a strand of white hair on the ground, then his complexion changed greatly. This is wolf hair. Why did the wolves appear here half a day ago? But Ren Xiaosu couldn't help but think so much. He just wanted to hurry back to the car and leave here. Roland in the car was talking to Qingjin on the phone, roughly explained the dangerous encounter this time. At the same time, it was also confirmed that Ren Xiaosu had entered the barrier. Hearing the affirmative reply, Wang Fuguwei suddenly said to Roland, Xiaosu saved your life, right? When Wang Fuguwei followed Ren Xiaosu to escape from the emergency, once showed his value to Ren Xiaosu, and now the time has come to show his value in the case of Wang Fuguwei, showing his old face. He won a business uniform for Ren Xiaosu within the 109 barrier. Wang Fuguwei, who is a human spirit, also knows that he will accept it when he sees it. It is good. And Ren Xiaosu on the side saw Chen Wushu with a golden hoop on his head at this moment. The difference with the golden hoop stick is that this golden hoop will not disappear. The golden hoop was given by the Bodhisattva. Master, don't you know? Chen Wudi looked like you should know. Of course. However, at this moment, Chen Wudi looked at Master Ren Xiaosu seriously. Do you remember how to pronounce the golden hoop mantra? Ren Xiaosu almost collapsed looking at Chen Wuving's expectant eyes. He tried it. 800 pace setters ran to the north slope. The artillery ran side by side to the north. At this moment, Chen Wushu had a severe headache and suddenly hugged his headmaster. Don't read it, master, don't read it. Ren Xiaosu sat there dumbfounded. He thought, Chen Wushu, you are quite cooperative. After a while, Yin Liyuan could see that the emergency was interrupted. Silent self, and the students were able to come to the 109 land alive. It was Ren Xiaosu's credit. Thank you, floated. Ren Xiaosu didn't open his eyes and laughed. Too polite, too polite, too polite. Ren Xiaosu counted the number of people and suddenly said he has 3 gall lines. Hurry up. The truck drove all the way from the road in the middle of the emergency to the barrier gate. Yen Luyuan lay behind the front of the car and looked outside. Brother, this is similar to our emergency. Jianghu in the car heard a look of disbelief in Jianghu's previous imagination. He thought that the emergency was that the buildings were lower and more broken. But he didn't expect that there were no buildings here. Most of the places where he lived were dilapidated and unbelievable. Roland jumped out of the car and walked majestically to the gate and shouted to the person at the door, "Get out of the way to see me." The person at the door seemed to be an emergency resident. The other party looked at Roland and was stunned for a long time. Who is Lu Yuan? Roland's face suddenly darkened. He shouted, "Managers of this emergency, hurry up and get out of Lao Tzu." Ren Xiaosu turned back to Yin Luyuan and said, "You don't have to get out of the car. Wait for the car to drive directly into the barrier." Jiang Hu was stunned for a moment, because when Ren Xiaosu spoke, his eyes turned to his side. Originally, Roland only promised Ren Xiaosu and the 5 of them to enter the field, and now he can only gamble, and he is far away, and he does not dare to check Roland. "I don't know how long I waited." The floodgates of the barrier finally opened slowly. A handsome, middle-aged man strode out. He greeted Roland with a smile. "Boss Luo is here." Missing the distance. But Roland didn't say anything with a gloomy face, but walked straight to the inside of Barrier 109, and he waved his hand at the truck to follow. Suddenly, Lu Yuan said in a loud voice, "Slow, who are the people in the car? Get out of the car and get checked." The next moment, Roland turned around and slapped Lu Yuan in the face. "Shameless things, I despise the car, I despise." Everyone was stunned. This is Lu Yuan. This is the manager of the 109 barrier. It was not until this moment that Ren Xiaosu felt that Roland was like the master of the consortium he imagined. After being slapped in the face, Lu Yuan stood in place and was speechless for half a lifetime. Ren Xiaosu sat in the front of the car and watched quietly. It turned out that this is the right and confidence of the consortium. When the vehicle entered the barrier, Yin Lu Yuan sighed. "Brother, the streets in this barrier are so clean. Brother, the buildings in the barrier are so high. Brother, there are really a lot of plants in this barrier. There are on both sides of the roadway. You see, there is a large meadow over there." Yin Lu Yuan exclaimed. "That is a park." Jiang Wu answered for Yin Lu Yuan. "The people in the barrier can take a walk here after dinner. There will be a great god dancing here at night." Yin Lu Yuan nodded. "Brother, you see a couple of women sitting on the lawn feeding each other. What a loving word." "Wait, how did they kiss?" Jiang Wu said with a strange face. "That's not a woman." Then Roland took Ren Xiaosu and a few people to see the store facing the bustling street, the lazy crowd. Yin Lu Yuan is a little unaccustomed. Roland pointed to the shop behind him and said, "How about this prime location? And there are still a few rooms in the backyard to live in." Roland said lightly, "From now on, Roland will not owe you anything." With the help of Roland, Ren Xiaosu got a store in a prime location, as well as Yin Lu Yuan, Wang Dalong and his own admission qualifications, and the 3 of them successfully obtained a student subsidy of 900 oceans. The next step is to discuss what this shop is going to do, and this shop was originally a Chinese medicine hall, with black medicine and antibiotics in Wang Fugui's hand. It is estimated that it can be sold for a while. Ren Xiaosu hesitated for a moment and said, "Black medicine can't be sold in batches, and the amount released once a week. He doesn't plan to exchange black medicine for money now. After all, he still has so much gold. So compared to money, he wants to unlock the ultimate form of the weapon, and when the door is closed at night, the 6 yuan found a note, and the city is not suitable for staying for a long time." Looking at the handwriting on the note, this made Ren Xiaosu feel very familiar at once. He thought of the handwriting left by Yang Xiaojing in the cave. Could it be that there will be something big in this 109 barrier? The other party actually wanted to persuade himself to leave. Ren Xiaosu was a little melancholy. This is just entering the barrier. The key is that he can't get out the next morning. As soon as everyone got up, they found that Chen Wudi was gone. At this time, Chen Wushu was looking at the streets in the fortress with curiosity on his face. He had been locked up in a mental hospital since he was a child, and the dark and oppressive environment made him very eager for the outside world, and he had lived in this prosperous world. But it was a long memory, and suddenly Chen Wudi heard a singing voice and walked towards the park, only to see a wide square, and the ants were lined up in a neat phalanx dancing in the square. This scene was so familiar and unfamiliar he even felt as if he had dreamed back to the past. It actually made Chen Wudi a little out of the way. The ants just watched Chen Wushu walk to the front of their phalanx with a high spirit. Before they could react to what was going on, I saw the young man staring at him with bright eyes and shouted, Children practice. When Shinwudi returned to the store, his nose was blue and his face was swollen. Ren Xiaosu was startled when he saw him. This Chen Wushu was a player who didn't have anything to do when he was hit by a bullet. Was he beaten like this by He Fengshun? Could it be that there is still some master hidden in this barrier? But no matter how Ren Xiaosu asked Shinwudi didn't say what happened originally. Wang Fuguwei planned to change the ticket for the celebration first, and the reason was that the bank's foreign exchange window consulted. As a result, after inquiring, I realized that it turned out that there was a 23% handling fee for the exchange. Ren Xiaosu persuaded him not to exchange so much if you have to change the barrier one day. Won't the handling fee become a waste of money? Wang Fuguwei was a little nervous when he heard this. Xiaosu, you said that we will change the barrier in the future. Where will we go? I didn't say it must be. Ren Xiaosu smiled, but now we are not short of big money, just change some change. The rest of Ren Xiaosu at this time already had a hunch that maybe one day in the future, they might really leave here and go to the next strange barrier again. This is the saddest back and forth man I have ever seen. Ren Xiaosu originally wanted to go to the gold shop to exchange for gold. Unexpectedly, he saw Su Xianchu's attack chain at the door. Ren Xiaosu did not want to be lucky. He knew that since the Qingshi Consortium had specially posted photos in the gold shop, then it must be something that has been discovered. This is to find his traces directly at the source of the stolen goods. At this moment, Su Xianchu has just come to the mechanism outside the 111 barrier. He has been running for many days and finally came here before starving to death. And the most important thing is that after losing Ren Xiaosu, he can't find suitable food in the wilderness, so he can only eat wild vegetables. But fortunately, he is an extraordinary person, and his physical fitness is excellent, and a little poisonous wild vegetables can't kill him. Su Xianchu walked to the front of a nest and said, "Hello, do you have anything to eat? I can pay for it." The head of the household walked out and looked at Su Xianchu, as if he suddenly found something, and shouted, Su Xianchu is here, everyone. Hurry up!" Looking at a large group of homeless people flocking over, Su Xianchu couldn't figure out what kind of grievances this was. He obviously didn't do anything. What is the purpose of arresting himself so hard in money? Su Xianchu did not hesitate anymore. He summoned a shadow and turned around. "It is not suitable to stay here for a long time. It seems that I can only go to other places. It is better to be a place that is completely outside the control of the Qingshi Consortium." Su Xianchu thought about it. Suddenly, I felt that the 109 barrier controlled by the Council Consortium was the best choice for me. The convoy driving over the wilderness in the distance began to slow down slowly. After reaching an emergency, the Qing on the car was discouraged. If it weren't for the fact that someone from the consortium outside the mountain answered, he didn't know when he would be able to return to the 111 barrier. Suddenly, a black shadow slipped in front of the car. Qing Cheng knew that the black shadow in front of him was Su Xianchu. He never expected that he would just come back so late and miss Su Xianchu. Seeing Su Xian running away in the direction of the 109 barrier, Qing Cheng hurriedly asked Su Man to call Roland. What he should be most concerned about now is not Su Xianchu, but how the old men of the Qingshi Foundation will punish themselves. Many people in the outside world think that Qingqing has great power within the Qingshi Foundation, but he only has a part of the battle sequence, and now Qingqing is out of the limelight in the process of fighting against Tinder. The old men also wanted to suppress his spirit for a long time, so house arrest and decentralization became a matter of course, and after entering the barrier, he returned to his single-family villa. He took a shower and changed into a new white suit. As for the previous one, he was directly burned. Qing walked out of the door after washing up. As a result, the two soldiers standing guard looked at him in embarrassment and said, "Boss Qing, you can't get out of the house. Don't make it difficult for us." Qing Quan raised his eyebrows. The old man said that he was not allowed to go out of the 111 barrier. When did he say that he could not even go out of the house? Could it be that someone falsely preached the holy decree? "I'm just going to listen to a tune. Who doesn't know about this 111 barrier?" I woke up hearing the two soldiers face each other, but didn't get out of the way at this moment. A bullet came from an unknown direction and hit the stone road in front of the two soldiers, and there was a hidden gunman in the vicinity protecting Kyung-Yung. And in the ridiculous apocalypse, you can get $1 million reward for 200 cubic centimeters of blood. Are you excited? This is the leaflet distributed by the Tinder Company in order to collect the blood of the transcendent Ren Xiaosu, and the others looked at the leaflet and suspected the purpose of the Tinder Company. It happened that there was a person outside the door at this time. "Doctor, show me what's wrong with me. My stomach has been uncomfortable because after the previous idea of exchanging gold was broken, I was very depressed and replied directly that I might be pregnant. The man was furious. Can't you hear that I am a man? Ren Xiaosu said with disgust on his face. Min, then I don't have it, seeing that this medical hall is so irresponsible. That person is not happy. Do you know who I am? Dare to talk to me like this? Ren Xiaosu, who didn't want to receive it yet, came to the spirit because the system issued a task to treat the disease and save people. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yin Linfeng without a smile. Come on, tell me what kind of disease you are. Yin Linfeng was stunned for a moment and thought that his big name had scared the other party. Ren Xiaosu handed the other party a few capsules and said with a pleasant face, you are gastritis. Just take some medicine. The moment the man took the medicine, the task was completed. Reward Foundation and Skill Learning Map. Yin Linfeng turned his head and said before leaving, is there anything to avoid? Don't eat bitter gourd. Ren Xiaosu looked at the map in the palace and said absent-mindedly. Yin Linfeng was stunned. Why don't you eat bitter gourd? Because it's not delicious with this stubble. Ren Xiaosu's mood has improved a lot. Yin Luyuan came over at this time. Brother, this tinder company is so rich. Why don't we do it for him? Ren Xiaosu kicked Yin Luyuan's ass and rolled on. Pack up your things and plan to go to school with me tomorrow. He posted a strict 6 yuan a year. This child grows up in a harsh environment like an emergency on weekdays. Someone has to tell him right and wrong in real time. At this time, Ren Xiaosu noticed the string of numbers at the back of the leaflet. What does this number mean? Is this a code name? This should be a phone number, Wang Fuguwei said with a smile. We also have a landline phone in the store, but we haven't figured out how to use it. Yin Luyuan was very excited and said that he wanted to try it. At his age, he is interested in all new things. A bunch of people gathered next to the magical landline phone. Even Li Xiaoyu came to join in the fun. Shinwudi looked at the phone in front of him and suddenly opened his mind, directly picked up the microphone on the phone, dialed a string of numbers casually, and after a few beeps, a voice came from the microphone. Who is Chun Invincible? I am Monkey King Neuropathy. The other party hung up the phone. Ren Xiaosu was miscellaneous. The other party actually accurately identified Shinwudi's essential attributes across the phone. Then Yin Luyuan also operated it again. Brother, this phone call is really amazing. The person on this phone is like being on the other side in order not to disturb others. Ren Xiaosu asked everyone not to give up anymore, but Yin Luyuan just hung up the phone again. This is the most conscientious loan I have ever seen. The interest is only 3 cents. I thought that everyone in the barrier lived and worked in peace and contentment, but I didn't expect that there were also some unclean industries. Listening to the voice on the other end of the phone, Ren Xiaosu felt extremely familiar. Have you heard this voice anywhere? He asked rhetorically. Do you know who I am? The other party is talking about. Who are you? Ren Xiaosu said, I am Yin Linfeng from Xiqing District. After a short silence on the phone, the other party said, I am also Yin Linfeng from Xiqing District. No wonder the voice sounds a little familiar. Wang Fuguwei on the side thinks that it is necessary to deal with these people more. At least it is not harmful to himself. Then he handed the list he had made before to Wang Fuguwei and repeatedly told him not to buy them together. As long as these things are bought, they can make bombs. The next morning, Ren Xiaosu and the others changed into the new clothes prepared by Li Xiaoyu. After thanking them, they also stepped on the door to the school, and as soon as they got off the tram, Ren Xiaosu saw a girl in a peaked cap at the school gate, and he was a little helpless. He didn't expect to bump into Miss Yang here. Ren Xiaosu glanced at the passers-by next to him, so he tried to find words to further ease the relationship between them. Can you give me back the dagger? Yang Xiaojing raised his eyebrows. To be honest, he didn't expect Ren Xiaosu to say this. At this time, a few students came over, and when they saw Yang Xiaojing, they greeted. Yang Xiaojing calmly pointed at Ren Xiaosu. He wanted to snatch my things. This operation almost made Ren Xiaosu feel relieved instantly. Seeing that more and more students came over to watch, Ren Xiaosu was anxious. I know him. His name is Miss Yang. As a result, the male classmate sneered at the next moment. You still pretend to know him? He obviously called someone Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu felt like he had been struck by lightning. He almost collapsed at that time. Then what should I call this? Is a student looking at Ren Xiaosu. Then what is your name? Ren Xiaosu calmed down a little this time. I want to say now that I also call someone Xiaosu. You don't believe it. So Ren Xiaosu was dragged by several students to meet the teacher. Yin Luyuan looked at the farce in front of him. This cap girl is not an ordinary person. Sister is good. I am Ren Xiaosu's younger brother. My name is Yin Luyuan. Miss Yang pits Ren Xiaosu that eyes don't blink. As a result, after he saw Yin Luyuan, he immediately became pleasant. Hello, I'm a good friend of your brother. The teacher in the teaching office was a little puzzled. Didn't you just enroll a Ren Xiaosu a few days ago? He looked at the admission procedures in front of him and suddenly felt a little confused. Ren Xiaosu felt that he and Miss Yang were not done after completing the formalities. The teacher in the academic affairs office smiled. Let's go the third class of high school. I will take you to meet the new classmates. As soon as he arrived at the classroom, Ren Xiaosu took a look. Fortunately, he was not assigned to a class with Yang Xiaojing. Otherwise, there would be two people named Xiaosu in one class. Not to mention that Ren Xiaosu couldn't stand it. Even the teacher would probably collapse. Ren Xiaosu sat down. On his left-hand side was a female classmate of the same age. On his right-hand side is the aisle. Which school are you from? Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and replied, transferred from the 5th middle school. Then you are still stunned that our barrier does not have the 5th middle school. How high is the degree of rejection of the homeless people by the barrier people? You may not even imagine. After Ren Xiaosu's table next door shouted. Everyone also knew that he came from outside the barrier. In the past 2 days, rumors about homeless people carrying the virus have been flying all over the sky. Yin Luyuan, who entered the campus at the same time, was also troubled by this rumor. He frowned and whispered, brother, do we really carry the virus? Ren Xiaosu shook his head. 6 yuan. When 10 people and 100 people say that we are not good enemies, and 10,000 people say that it is not an enemy or an enemy, but a proof. Yin Luyuan said in a low voice, although I don't know as much as you, but even if tens of millions of people slander me, as long as I think it is wrong, it cannot be regarded as proof. Ren Xiaosu smiled. You are right. Ren Xiaosu stood on the rooftop. This was the first time he had the opportunity to look down on the patient, and at this time, Yang Xiaojing suddenly appeared behind them. To Yang Xiaojing's sharp eyes, Yin Luyuan consciously made an excuse and went to watch the iron door of Shioji slam shut. Yang Xiaojing threw something at Ren Xiaosu. It was the dagger that Yang Xiaojing stole from Ren Xiaosu. At the beginning, Yang Xiaojing was very calm. Yang Xiaojing didn't explain too much. When Ren Xiaosu was still stunned, Yang Xiaojing suddenly pulled out a pistol and pointed it at him. How did you escape from the blockade of the Qingshi Kai group? Faced with this problem, Ren Xiaosu still wanted to play han and fool around, but the muzzle of the gun was straight to the logarithm. Countless test subjects rushed out. There are also monsters in the crater. Ren Xiaosu said briefly. A lot of accidents happened. You can't imagine how terrible the monsters in the crater are. I imagine that Yang Xiaojing corrected this time. The answer made Ren Xiaosu stunned because Yang Xiaojing's tone was very independent. Could it be that Yang Xiaojing had seen such a considerate thing before? Originally, I was worried that Ren Xiaosu would tell the truth. Yang Xiaojing put the pistol away again. Now there is no need to be afraid, because he and Luo Xingyu encountered wolves when they returned along the way. If it weren't for Luo Xingyu's shuttling ability, they would also have to make a detour through, and Ren Xiaosu could return to the 113 location before the destruction in a short time. It shows that he is not just an ordinary person with a lot of strength, but a super reflector. After listening to Yang Xiaojing's analysis, Ren Xiaosu's heart tightened, and he originally wanted to explain something. But Yang Xiaojing looked at Ren Xiaosu seriously and said, I don't listen. Ren Xiaosu was helpless and explained a lot by himself. People only said 3 words and denied the reason. It's just that Yang Xiaojing suddenly said, I said that this is not dangerous, but it just makes you understand that everyone has a purpose, so don't do anything that hurts both sides. Ren Xiaosu readily agreed. In fact, his purpose is also this: as long as everyone gets along peacefully, then there is nothing. After saying this, Yang Xiaojing was about to go downstairs, but he heard Ren Xiaosu ask again, what is the purpose of the Tinder Company's acquisition of the blood of the super rebels? There are more dangers in this 109 barrier than you think. Yang Xiaojing said, don't provoke the fire easily, and don't sell blood. Seeing that Yang Xiaojing didn't want to say more, Ren Xiaosu asked his last question, why did there be a super rebel? Ignoring how terrifying it is for the human beings inside the barrier just because Ren Xiaosu is from outside the barrier, they speak ill of him. The subconscious of the people in the barrier to reject the homeless people is more radical than Ren Xiaosu imagined. Is it the degradation of morality, or the distortion of human nature behind all this? Zhang Hu is a little angry in the face of all this. Aren't you all human? Who said that homeless people will definitely spread diseases? Did any of your children get sick when they came home last night as a teacher? At this time, the rivers and lakes were a little persistent, cute, and even a little silly. But if it weren't for the other party's persistence and perseverance, Ren Xiaosu would not have helped the other party in the wilderness. Zhang Hu Tongue Battle Group Confucianism applied to let Ren Xiaosu go to their class, and at this time, an abrupt voice in the crowd sounded, I also applied to go to your class because the students in Jianghu have no parents. This is actually the pain of the rivers and lakes. This time to apply for Ren Xiaosu, you only need to get the consent of the students. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside the crowd. More than 20 students walked to the side of Jianghu and expressed their willingness to let Ren Xiaosu come to class. In the eyes of these students in Jianghu, they stood up for Ren Xiaosu at this time, but were grateful. If it weren't for Ren Xiaosu, none of them would have been able to sit in the classroom alive. Ren Xiaosu returned to the classroom and took his school bag to prepare for a shift change. Before leaving, Ren Xiaosu came to Chao Yuqi's side. "I wish you a speedy recovery on the way to class." Jianghu said to Ren Xiaosu, "If you have any difficulties in your studies recently, you can tell me that I can teach you anything that you don't know and give you a makeup lesson." Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and said, "There is indeed knowledge that needs to be asked from teacher Jiang." Which subject Jianghu asked Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. Bicycle department. This shift change incident caused Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojing to become the same table. Even Ren Xiaosu had to sigh. Maybe this is fate. After school in the afternoon, Yin Luyuan looked at Jianghu and came back with Ren Xiaosu. The first time he saw Jianghu, he said, "Thank you." Yin Luyuan really doesn't like these barrier people more and more now, except for Jianghu and his students, of course, and then took out his bicycle and asked Jianghu to call everyone. "You have to master your balance when riding a bicycle, and don't look at the front of the bike. Look forward, overcome your fears, and watch Jiangwu ride the bicycle back and forth with ease, showing a unique charm of a mature woman." Ren Xiaosu just wanted to try it when a roaring sound suddenly came from a distance. The sound was like the sound of a bomb exploding in the barrier. "Is it Yang Xiaojing who did it?" he said to Chen Wudi and Yin Luyuan. "You take your gun and close the door of the store. You are not allowed to open the door until I come back." "Teacher Jiang Wu, you are also hiding with us in case something happens. We can take care of it after." Speaking, Ren Xiaosu left the shop. Now that he is an extraordinary person, he can no longer stay out of the matter. He must grasp the first-hand information with his own eyes and ears. In order to make the most correct judgment, only in this way can he continue to live with everyone. Is Ren Xiaosu being pitted by Yang Xiaojing again? The same operation and the same method. A sentence of good luck interprets Yang Xiaojing's consistent operation of digging pits. Ren Xiaosu in the pit was not good just now. Ren Xiaosu heard the explosion and felt that the tall building in front of him should be the most convenient to observe the battle situation. However, he had just climbed to the edge of the roof and was about to jump up. The muzzle of a black hole was pressed against his head, and Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He didn't expect that there would be someone on it. Looking up, the other party was wearing a peaked cap that he was familiar with. The explosion should not have been caused by Yang Xiaojing after all. There is still some distance from the explosion point. Yang Xiaojing didn't seem to expect to see Ren Xiaosu here. I have to say that the two of them have a strange tacit understanding. Ren Xiaosu climbed onto the roof and patted the dust on his body. What happened? There was such a big movement. It turned out that the Tinder company encountered a transcendent person who was selling his heart and wanted to arrest him, but he missed Ren Xiaosu's side in his heart. Fortunately, he didn't sell his heart and stopped Chen Wudi. However, such a strong company, if you are not fully prepared, how can you get rid of the transcendent? Under Yang Xiaojing's explanation, Ren Xiaosu knew that the transcendent this time still had companions. Before exchanging blood for money, it was agreed that he would be rescued when he was born. This next Ren Xiaosu understood. It turned out that the transcendent who went to sell blood was also prepared. Now this Tinder company has failed. Is there just a chance to do their vote? Yang Xiaojing shook his head and said that their early morning battle sequence was very strong, even if there were only 5 of them. The reason why those 2 transcendents have been able to survive until now is because the Qing-style Luo Fat Man is also playing ghosts. And the reason why Roland is tough with the Tinder company is because Qing arrested more than 100 members of the Tinder company last year, and the two sides have long been an undying mortal enemy. What is the relationship between these so many? The struggle between the platoons and regiments is so fierce. Ren Xiaosu couldn't help but ask then, why did you go? And you obviously don't deal with the Tinder company, aren't the enemies of the enemy friends? Yang Xiaojing glanced at him. The enemy is the enemy we don't play with. The vertical and horizontal. This is the sniper rifle with the huge guts in Yang Xiaojing's hand. Whether it is Tinder company or Qing, they are all trying to master things that they can't control at all. Whether they succeed or fail is a disaster at this moment. Ren Xiaosu saw countless Li Consortium combat troops arrive on the battlefield. Looking at the Li clan's slow courage, Ren Xiaosu didn't complain. Yang Xiaojing, who was observing with a sniper rifle, replied, they have something more important to protect, and they don't threaten that thing, they won't care. After saying this, Yang Xiaojing's breathing suddenly calmed down, and he looked in the direction of his gun. Ren Xiaosu saw a person crawling out of the sewer. It turned out to be Roland. Ren Xiaosu wondered. Why is this big guy of the Celebration Consortium so familiar with the sewers of the Li family? Across the street, Yang Xiaojing took out an observer brother from his pocket and gave it to Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu was blindsided at that time. Faced with that cold voice, he had to obediently say the wind speed distance. As soon as Ren Xiaosu's voice fell, I saw that Yang Xiaojing had quickly calculated the compensation angle to adjust. Ren Xiaosu wondered. Are you going to kill Roland? Boom! Yang Xiaojing replied to Ren Xiaosu with the sound of a gunshot. The roar of this gunfire was abrupt in the night sky and almost startled Ren Xiaosu. It turned out that the bullet was not fired at Roland, but at the off-road vehicle. Roland, who had not yet run to the side of the car, was silent at the time. Who was this? Seeing that he was about to get in the car and ran away, the car was blown up. Roland could only take Tang Zhou and the others back into the sewer. And this kind of operation is just for fun in Yang Xiaojing's eyes. Ren Xiaosu looked at the combat troops of the Far Deal Consortium and had already surrounded this side. This is Yang Xiaojing smiled. Good luck. Say it. A door opened in the shadows beside Yang Xiaojing. Just this time, Ren Xiaosu had already heard someone yelling there were snipers on the bank building. He turned around and crawled under the building. If he doesn't flash, he will be surrounded by the Council Consortium. When Ren Xiaosu returned to the store, he was already sweating profusely. Yin Luyuan watched Ren Xiaosu come back and asked nervously, Brother, are you not injured? What happened? Ren Xiaosu briefly said what happened just now. Seeing that there is no danger now, I am ready to let Chenwudi send Jiang Wuxin back. However, at this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door outside the store. It turned out that Roland had come with someone. Ren Xiaosu opened the door. He looked at Roland with a strange expression. Why are you so ugly? Roland took Tang Zhou and them into the store. I wanted Xiaosu to use black medicine to save the injured. Ren Xiaosu pretended to be casual and asked, how did you get injured? Wouldn't the explosion in the barrier just now have anything to do with you? Roland almost jumped. We just accidentally fell. In fact, Roland also knows that he can only deceive you. How could a person as smart as Ren Xiaosu believe such a lie? But Ren Xiaosu wanted to disgust Roland. Did you come here on foot? What about your car? Roland egg hurt for a long time. The car was sent for maintenance. Don't talk about today's matter, otherwise I will reveal that Chen Wudi is transcendent. Ren Xiaosu took out the black medicine angrily. He looked at the unconscious man carefully and guessed in his heart that this was not one of the two transcendent beings tonight. At this time, Roland noticed that Ren Xiaosu was sweating profusely. Did you go out just now? Ren Xiaosu pointed to the bicycle in the paper yard. I just learned how to ride a bicycle. Teacher Jiang Wu is here to teach us. Facing Roland's questioning, Jiang Wu's expression was very natural, and there was no trace of performance. Li Xiaoyu took a towel and helped the transcendent wipe the blood off his face. He was surprised that he was still a woman. It seems that he is about 27 years old, and at this time, Chen Wudi came over. Master. It seems to be a white dragon horse. This woman deliberately went to Boisjon Company with her brother to donate blood in order to get $1 million honorarium, but unexpectedly, all the remuneration was under the guise of being attacked by the other party, and my brother unfortunately died tragically. And Roland wanted a transcendent bodyguard to save him after Li Xiaoyu gave him black medicine. The other party also successfully woke up. Looking at Roland's courteous look, the other party never believed that Roland saved him. Just wanted to walk out with a weak body. Li Xiaoyu hurriedly walked over and helped him up and comforted. You are not healed yet. You can't move as a result. I saw this woman's tears falling down one by one. My brother is still in the hands of the Tinder Company, but his brother has long been blown away by an RPG just because the Tinder Company does not want to live as long as the blood is alive. Ren Xiaosu was silent at this moment. When he first heard about the Tinder Company, he thought that the other party was hoarding fire for human beings or something, but now it seems that the other party is not a good person, and said to Roland, don't implicate us. Roland is not angry. Tomorrow at dawn Tang Zhou will send you 30,000 yuan gradually. The female superbreeding also woke up calmly. He knew that it was impossible for him to rescue his brother. And Roland moved his affection in order to win over this woman. But the other party didn't eat Roland said it all. He asked Dong Funan to prepare to leave after thanking Ren Xiaosu. As soon as the words fell, Dong Funan fainted again. Fortunately, Li Xiaoyu was holding Xiaosu. What can I do? Ren Xiaosu looked at the other party and said to Roland ruthlessly, you hurry up and take him away. For Ren Xiaosu's expression, Roland used money tactics. Ren Xiaosu even asked Chen Wushu to guard the door in case the other party ran away before receiving the money. Early the next morning, a few people who went to school met Miss Yang at the school gate. Yin Luyuan greeted him obediently. Hello, Sister Miss Yang is so happy. Are you okay? I will bring you something delicious tomorrow. Let your brother pass it on to you. Ren Xiaosu watched this scene from the side and always felt a little wrong. When did these two have such a good relationship? This is Miss Yang, suddenly curious. Ren Xiaosu, didn't you ask teacher Jiang Wu to teach you a bicycle yesterday? Why didn't you get up today? Didn't you learn? Ren Xiaosu pondered for a moment and said, I sent my bicycle for maintenance. After saying this, Ren Xiaosu saw that Miss Yang was actually in broad daylight at the school gate, and her waist couldn't straighten up. With a smile, the car needs to change the oil and filter before it can be maintained at this moment. Ren Xiaosu knew what he was wrong. This is a big loss of poverty. Immediately afterwards, Yang Xiaojing said that he had learned to ride a bicycle at one time. This made Ren Xiaosu shut up and ask the palace, but the answer turned out to be that the other party did not have bicycle-related skills. At this time, Ren Xiaosu found out that Yang Xiaojing, this girl, lied, and didn't even need to be messed up, and when she opened her mouth to come to the next class, Miss Yang was named by the teacher to answer the question because she was absent-minded. But who knew that Yang Xiaojing directly took off his cap and put it on Ren Xiaosu? Looking at her delicate and stunning face, Ren Xiaosu didn't expect Miss Yang to be so good-looking. You can never imagine how strange the skills of these two beauties are. Yang Xiaojing's advanced jumping bands. Forget it now. Even Luo Xingyu has a high-level nose pick. This high-level nose pick is more clean. It took 2 drawings. Ren Xiaosu finally drew Luo Xingyu's skill Shadow Gate. The first ability Shadow is not to mention durability, and this time the significance is even more important. Ren Xiaosu tried to use this ability for that. There were 2 shadow doors open in front of him, one for the entrance and one for the exit, and the only flaw was that he still didn't know where to open the exit, and the exit in front of him was quite different from what he imagined when he tried to pass through the entrance door. An accident happened. Ren Xiaosu wooden stool pocket. He tried it I don't know how many times in just 1 minute, but no matter how he tried, he could only pass through one hand. Is it because of when he used poo-poo? Luo Xingyu only stretched out one arm. Can this palace be reliable? Why can others wear it? Well, I can only pass one arm. What danger do you want to run away in the future? Do you want to run first? Ren Xiaosu returned to the store and prepared to practice opening the door of the shadow over and over again, trying to find the law in the shadow. At this time, Li Xiaoyu came to him with a black face. What about Yin Luyuan? Did you forget them at school? Ren Xiaosu reacted, only then I will pick them up now. But the next moment, Zhang Hu led Wang Dalong and Yin Luyuan into the walk, and he smiled. Didn't you say that you want to continue to learn cycling today? How can you leave alone after class? Yin Luyuan looked at Ren Xiaosu coldly. I am in the teaching building. Seeing you and Yang Xiaojing leave, Ren Xiaosu was suddenly extremely embarrassed. Suddenly, the sound of a car engine came from outside the door. Again, a car stopped at the door. Roland's voice came in from outside. Ren Xiaosu, come and see how about my new car. Ren Xiaosu rolled his eyes. Buy a new car and see if you will die rich is amazing. What about the money? It turned out that Roland came over this time and brought a lot of supplements to Dongfang Man. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu seemed to see love in Roland. As a result, he knocked on the door for a long time but did not react. Don't you want the dignified celebration? Consortium bigwigs have been scolded by others for a long time. Why are you still rushing over to put a hot face on your cold ass? Roland is not happy. What do you know? I used to be among thousands of flowers. The leaves do not stick to the body. Hearing this, Ren Xiaosu was happy. The medicine you bought for me was used by Tangzhou. With a click, Luo Lan's expression was as embarrassing as he was. However, Roland is not an ordinary person. He pulled Ren Xiaosu to change the topic and said, can Chenwudi borrow me to use it? Recently, I was thinking of borrowing Chenwudi to win the research success. But Ren Xiaosu saw that he couldn't get any news, so he refused. At this moment, a person from the Qingshi Consortium walked in outside, and he whispered a few words to Roland, and then left in a hurry. Ren Xiaosu looked at the man's back, and he felt that the Qingshi Foundation was probably plotting something. How can I lose weight fast? A steamed bun in the morning, noon and evening. So should I eat it before or after a meal? This is the weight loss plan that Ren Xiaosu formulated for Roland in order to pursue Dongfu Man. Roland decided to take steamed buns as a weight loss matter. Looking at the beauty in front of him, Ren Xiaosu felt that Roland was probably already obsessed with transcendentals, and he had heard Chenwudi say that he wanted to serve him. Now he is taking the risk to go back to the east and south, and he has launched a fierce assault on the east and south. And if there is a problem with the east and the south, it is equivalent to putting a time bomb on the side. This made Ren Xiaosu faintly feel that something was wrong. He has to beware of this east and south at this moment. The palace suddenly said perform the task and take in the people in distress for 7 days. After completing the task, you can unlock new goods from the vending machine. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. He thought that the vending machine could only be bought if there was no. It turned out that he relied on the task to unlock new goods. At dinner in the evening, Ren Xiaosu asked Dong Funan casually, "What is your extraordinary ability?" "I have a lot of strength," Dong Funan whispered. Ren Xiaosu felt that his ability was a bit chicken. Said with emotion, "To be honest, it really depends on the help of Roland and them to escape with your ability alone," Dong Funan defended. He didn't have a good heart. His eyes and tone were not right originally. Dong Funan was going to find the Tinder company for revenge. But how could Ren Xiaosu agree? So he persuaded bitterly, "If he is caught and tortured, maybe it will expose the fact that we took you, and more importantly, he will be ruined when he leaves." As a result, after speaking, Ren Xiaosu suddenly found that Chenwudi was a little sullen at this time. Yin Luyuan whispered a few words to Chenwudi, and Chenwudi immediately agreed without opening his eyes and laughing. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yin Luyuan and said curiously, "What did you tell him to make him so happy?" "It is very simple to make him happy." Yin Luyuan took a sip of porridge and said, "Just call him Monkey King." Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a while. He suddenly found that Yin Luyuan, this kid is very good at grasping the key points, and then Dong Funan was tied up by Chenwudi. No matter how strong his strength is, it is not as big as Chen Wushu. Now Dong Funan was shocked. He originally thought that he was rescued by a well-wisher, but now it feels like he has fallen into a thief's den and been kidnapped. So he almost asked his family for ransom. I wanted to shout for help, but before he could shout, he was shocked by Chenwudi's hair. If it weren't for Ren Xiaosu taking over the task and accepting Roland's money, he might have kicked Dong Funan away a long time ago. Then Ren Xiaosu pulled Yin Luyuan into the house and prepared to try the newly copied shadow gate. Let Yin Luyuan take a few steps back. Ren Xiaosu opened the door of the shadow in his mind but was stunned. There was no reaction. After looking for a while, he found that the door had actually opened to the floor. Looking at this unreliable operation, Yin Luyuan panicked in his heart. "Brother, you better don't experiment with me yet. This is the door of extraordinary ability." Shadow Ren Xiaosu successfully copied Luo Xingyu's ability through the palace. Originally, it was almost 2 meters long, but he could only pass through one arm. After Ren Xiaosu's will transformation at this time, there was only one person with the thickness of an arm left in the shadow gate. In order not to let Yin Luyuan act as a guinea pig, Ren Xiaosu said to Yin Luyuan, "Tomorrow, when you and Sister Xiaoyu go grocery shopping, buy a live chicken." Ren Xiaosu is full of confidence in his ability. He can beat others by surprise, although this ability is still a little imperfect. But it is very much in line with Ren Xiaosu's character. Next, with the cooperation of Yin Luyuan, Ren Xiaosu began to make bombs on campus. The next day, Jiang Hu came to the classroom to prepare to choose the class leader and the study committee member. This is a classmate who recommended Ren Xiaosu to come to the male class leader and the female to be the study committee member. In this way, it is easy to distinguish, and Ren Xiaosu does not know what the class leader does. "I thought I could receive a subsidy under Miss Yang's answer. I realized that it was to urge everyone to study." After speaking, he turned his head and began to sleep again. Roland has been planning something very dangerous recently. It is best to keep a certain distance from him. Ren Xiaosu was interested. It just so happened that he also suspected that Roland was secretly doing something. What is Roland doing? We saw the people of the Qingshi Foundation stepping on the outside of the 4th mental hospital. Miss Yang said slowly, "It seems that she wants to rob that mental hospital." Ren Xiaosu has heard of robbing a mental hospital for the first time. And this mental hospital is holding a very dangerous transcendent, and if Roland releases him, I'm afraid the entire 109 barrier will fall into an unknowable future. As soon as he said this, Ren Xiaosu understood that after co-authoring Roland's failure to subdue Dongfunan, he turned his attention to the so-called 4th mental hospital, and the reason why Roland dared to rob the Li family's mental hospital. Relying on the people who were planted in the 109 barrier by Qingqing, even if something happened, the big deal was to let Qingqing pay for the ransom, and this person in this mental hospital has extraordinary abilities. That is hypnosis every day. Even the person who delivers the meal is pushed through the door with noise-canceling headphones. Why don't such terrible people kill Ren Xiaosu directly? Now it is Miss Yang's turn to wonder, why did you kill him? Why did you kill him? This logic is very strange. However, this time Ren Xiaosu said calmly, "How do you judge good and evil? Who decides the criteria for judging?" Miss Yang fell silent. The world was destroyed in the hands of those things. We just don't want to see the world fall back into despair. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. This is the result of antecedents. The organization to which Miss Yang belongs is cleaning up what has destroyed the world. This is what Miss Yang said. There is a problem with the transcendent that Roland saved. If he follows Roland, you should also be careful. This is the most professional bondage technique I have ever seen. He is much more pitiful than being passed by Su Xianchu in the backyard of the store. Li Xiaoyu was busy washing vegetables and cooking. Because Ren Xiaosu had explained that there was a problem with Dong Funan, he never approached him. Chen Wudi kept looking at Dong Fun, and at this moment, Chen Wudi was sitting on the small bench next to Dong Funan. Staring at the row of ants on the ground, he didn't notice at all that Dong Funan, who was originally tied up behind him, didn't know when he had slowly broken free. Just as Chen Wudi was about to go out to eat, Dong Funan's arm suddenly climbed up Chen Wui's neck. He was lying on Chen Wuving's body. Dong Funan whispered, "Little brother, what are you looking at?" "Lost owner, please respect yourself," Chen Wushu said solemnly, but as soon as the words fell, Dong Funan had already opened the mouth of his heart and soul. The two tiger teeth between his lips and teeth actually grew out quickly, and he bit into Chen Wui's neck. With a bang, the tooth was broken, and I saw that the moment Dong Funan bit down, Chen Wui's shoulder suddenly had a golden armor looming under the skin, and then the armor actually wrapped his entire shoulder and neck. Dong Funan never expected such a scene, but before he could react, it was a sudden sound of wind in the house, and Chen Wushu knelt on the ground in an instant, and reflexively punched Dong Funan's lower abdomen, and this punch made him spurt out a mouthful of blood. Almost didn't kill him, but Chen Wushu didn't stop at the face of the other party's woman, but hit Dong Funan in the face with 2 punches, and Dong Funan had completely lost his ability to fight. He even lost his normal thinking ability in his head. He sat down. Chen Wushu sneered, "1 punch is not enough to take 3 punches in this way. It is called 3 dozen white." It turns out that Dong Funan can improve his extraordinary ability by absorbing blood. He squatted at the door of the Tinder company before. He also wanted to find an opportunity to rub blood on his mouth, but he couldn't figure out how he ended up in this field at this time. After seeing Sister Xiaoyu, Dong Funan immediately said, "Sister Xiaoyu, you are the kindest, you let me go." But as soon as the words fell, Dong Funan saw that Sister Xiaoyu handed Chen Wushu a rope again, and held him tightly this time. To be honest, Ren Xiaosu really didn't want to treat a woman like this. But what kind of men and women are the security hazards in this world? Kindness is precious, but if kindness does not take up arms, it is weakness invincible. You have done a good job this time. It is worthy of praise, but you have to lock the door so as not to let Roland see it. Facing Ren Xiaosu's praise, Chen Wudi was as happy as a child. A few people were just about to go out to eat. Ren Xiaosu always felt that something was missing. Yin Luyuan said, without the voice of Roland, to curry favor with Dong Funan. Ren Xiaosu suddenly realized that Roland they planned to ransack the 4th mental hospital. Won't it be tonight? Do you know where the 4th mental hospital is? Across the street, Ren Xiaosu took the map and went out to the 4th psychiatric hospital. Just arrived at this door. A smoke manhole cover outside the 4th psychiatric hospital was suddenly pushed open from the inside out. And then out of it came 30 fighters with live ammunition, and the fat man Roland Tangzhou said in the improvised communication equipment, 3 teams. Infiltrate separately, don't fall in love, find the number 2 white mouse and retreat immediately. All targets except the 2nd white mouse will be killed. There are only 2 transcendents in this 4th mental hospital, but number 1 is too dangerous according to intelligence. So Roland chose to give up, and when Roland was passing by the reference room, he looked at the data and saw a fair-skinned young man sitting in the interrogation room, and across from him was a doctor in a white coat. The man didn't seem to remember anything, and then the doctor began to hypnotize him, and in the midst of a countdown, the man suddenly opened his eyes and jumped down, followed by a second hypnosis, and this time he vomited. The doctor actually fell asleep looking at all this. The young man smiled. Roland looked at the information with some emotion. It turned out that this was the legendary demon whisperer. It seems that it was the hypnotic process that turned on his supernatural abilities. The demon whisperer is a consortium between the conglomerates for some kind of transcendent person with extreme hypnotic methods, saying that no matter how one takes away, only number 2. Said that the combat personnel of the Qin City Consortium worked neatly. As soon as Roland led someone in with the front foot, Li's car arrived at the door. Ren Xiaosu looked at all this. He knew that Roland would definitely have someone injured in this battle. If he needs treatment, he will definitely come to him. Now I have to go back early on the other side. Roland looked at number 2 on the operating table. This age is too young. 10 years old or 11 years old can be my daughter. How can I help with the accounts at this time? The combat squad has already carried number 2 on the operating table. Boss. We have to hurry away. A few people just came out of the courtyard and walked to the vehicle. Unexpectedly, a few rumbles. The vehicle in the distance exploded directly like a brilliant fireworks at midnight. Roland was angry at that time. Who is this? Who is this? I have nothing to do every day. I have to play with Lao Tzu's new car. Lao Tzu is not finished with you. Looking at these young Xiaojin in the distance, a hint of inclination appeared at the corner of his mouth in the middle grass hall. Yen Luyuan pulled everyone to pray for Ren Xiaosu. The most bitter thing is Dongfu Nan was tied up and sat there. As soon as Ren Xiaosu entered the door, he asked everyone to clean up. Luo Lan came in a while. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Ren Xiaosu to hear the sound of the police opening outside the rolling shutter door. To be honest, Ren Xiaosu was a little curious. How did this group of people accurately find the police defeat at their doorstep? Hangzhou said to Ren Xiaosu, "This is our boss's cousin." At this time, Chen Wudi came over again. He looked at the little girl carefully for a long time, and suddenly said to Ren Xiaosu, "Master." This time it seems that Roland was laughing angrily. "What's the matter? Do you see that everyone is like your white dragon horse?" Chen Wudi shook his head. It was not Beilongma. It was Biandan. I have to say that now the team of learning scriptures in the West Heaven is really getting neater and neater. Chen Wudi not only gathered the 4 masters and apprentices. Even Biandan was considered. Ren Xiaosu thought to himself. Now he is waiting for the 2 boxes and the white dragon horse to return to the team. It turns out that this little sister of Biandan is called Si Liren. Extraordinary ability is very powerful. Ren Xiaosu was a little guilty when he heard this. You must know that the last person who said that he was just a strong person was still tied up in the house. Silly. Casually carried. Wang Dalong. Frightened, Wang Dalong screamed. Yen Luyuan sighed about this. It turned out to be Bian Shan who carried the sand monk. Roland can't accept this reality now. He can't figure out how the person he worked so hard to get back joined the team of learning scriptures in the West. I don't believe it. This little girl must be blind in Roland's opinion. How can there be such a coincidence in this world? It is reasonable to say that one person is crazy. It is a little weird for 2 people to be crazy together. And Xiaosu suddenly felt that at a certain moment, he would not be the reincarnation of Tang Sang. Yen Luyuan stared at the little girl tightly and greeted, "Who am I?" "You are the little white dragon," the little girl said as a matter of course. This time, it was Yen Luyuan's turn to smile. "It's a pity I'm not at this time." There was applause from outside the store. A young man with a beautiful face walked in with a smile. "Sure enough, I can't fool you. Come back from the room." The atmosphere in the whole room became tense. Ren Xiaosu didn't even notice when this young man came in. Roland raised his gun and pointed it at the young man. He looked like he was facing a great enemy. It's not that Roland's nerves are too tense, it's that he knows the identity of the other party, the devil, and the fool. It turns out that the person who came is called Li Shantan. Li is an outcast. The reason why he called himself an abandoned son, it is estimated that he was imprisoned in a mental hospital. Because of Li's work, Ren Xiaosu looked at the other party calmly and asked, "What is your purpose?" Li Shantan looked at Ren Xiaosu and said with a smile, "I just came over to say hello to everyone." Looking at Ren Xiaosu in front of me, Li Shantan's eyes glowed red. "I always feel that you are very special this time." It is Ren Xiaosu's turn to be unexpectedly very handsome. Li Shantan pointed to his head and smiled. "This place is very special. Then everyone is destined to see you again. In addition, Boss Luo, I didn't hypnotize your subordinates. Don't worry too much." Seeing that Li Shantan was about to leave, Ren Xiaosu hurriedly called out the other party. "Why didn't you come out of the mental hospital before?" Li Shantan thought for a while and said, "Because it is not yet time to come out." This sentence made Ren Xiaosu suddenly realize Li Shantan must have something to do when he comes out. Could it be related to the research results of the Li Consortium? Li Shantan walked into the night with the silly people. Now Roland was disappointed. The bamboo basket was empty. Why did the Li family detain their children? Ren Xiaosu said curiously, "The inside of the consortium is not as beautiful as you imagine. Intrigue can be seen everywhere. If you want to get ahead in the family, you have to step on the shoulders of your brothers and sisters to climb up." Ren Xiaosu smiled. "Then how many shoulders of brothers and sisters have you?" And Qingzhen stepped on. "He has a heavy army in his hand to win 1,000 miles. And he is meticulous and takes precautions. His daily hobby is to listen to operas and plant flowers." In Roland's eyes, Qingzhen is a natural leader. Ren Xiaosu did not expect Roland to defend his younger brother so much. For himself, He said that he could live a rotten life. The current 109 barrier has begun to be chaotic. The Yang family has arrived. The Tinder company is still hidden in the shadows. The demon fish collector has also come out. Even the thugs came. Roland posted people Xiao. So you don't be too idle. Recently Ren Xiaosu looked at him squarely. Isn't the most conspicuous person in the barrier now you? Ren Xiaosu was more curious. It is so chaotic here. Didn't Qingshi send someone over to support? Facing such a question, Roland said, without any scruples, that he could apologize one by one. However, the headquarters of the courier consortium is located on the mountainside inside Barrier 111, and the old man in the upper hand position in the conference room taps his fingers on the table. How is Qinghuai's progress? They had already bypassed Jinshan the day before yesterday. It is estimated that they should arrive at the 113 barrier today. A middle-aged man said he went there to clear the remnants of the experimental subjects first. And then when the post-disaster reconstruction forces arrived, they were looking for the crater in the mountains, and now the creature was supposed to be back asleep, and it didn't seem to be going to get out of the crater. We suspect that he is dependent on the temperature of the volcano, and in order to ensure that the 113 barrier can be rebuilt smoothly, this time Qingshi directly dispatched an operation. Because the resources near the 113 barrier are of vital importance, the post-disaster reconstruction must be completed as soon as possible. The old man said to the young man, "Lucky you cooperate with them to deploy the displaced people to work in the past." Then I asked about the recent movements of Qingzhan. I basically don't do anything else except listening to music every day. The old man nodded his head calmly and lit him up first. The young man's sharpness was too deep to be wrong, and no one else had an opinion on the matter. But at that moment there was a knock on the door of the conference room. It turned out that the 7th Combat Brigade led by Qinghuai was attacked by the experimental body, and now it is retreating, and more than half of the dead and wounded. The bigwigs of the Qingshi Foundation in the conference room were still talking and laughing just now suddenly fell into silence in the face of such a powerful test subject. Someone sighed and said, "Why don't we use Qingzhan? Let Qingzhan deal with these test subjects. He is still very experienced in fighting." Now everyone in the city is suspicious that the test subject has a new life form, an intelligent test subject, but for the capable celebrity, these people still choose to suppress the 109 on the other side. The cars were facing the barrier, but there was a black shadow lying under the car. This person was Su Xianzhong, who was busy running for his life. A pair of vehicles transporting supplies were slowly moving towards the 109 barrier. A black figure clings under the chassis of a large truck. This person is Su Xianzhong, who has made a long journey to the 109 barrier after the convoy rumbled into the barrier. Su Xianchu turned under the car and climbed into the cargo box. This rush made him very tired, and he suddenly had some doubts. The wooden box in front of him was too tight, and he took out his portable dagger and pried open a wooden box, and as a result, he was stunned at the first sight of the goods. Because it was full of guns and ammunition, Su Xianchu realized that this was not the arms transported by the Li Consortium. It was smuggled in by someone. Before he could figure it out, the truck stopped. It was already late at night and early in the morning, and Roland looked inside with a flashlight. The two of them stared at each other with big eyes, and Su Xianchu sent Su Xianchu to jump outside. He kicked Roland in the chest and ran to the street outside. "If you don't run, I'm afraid you won't be able to run away." After Roland was kicked, and you flipped out with a bang, he was lying on the ground and didn't forget to yell to the side, "Hurry up and catch him for me." He is Su Xianchu. Su Xianchu, who was running away in front, looked back and was almost scared to death. Although he has a shadow that can shoot bullets, but there are too many bullets, it is not good. At this moment, Su Xian felt very uncomfortable, and he was just a little curious about the secrets of his close life. But he didn't even enter the blockade circle. The eyes of this Qingshi consortium are too small. Roland, their location is not too far from Ren Xiaosu, and their shop. Seeing Roland running over panting, "Who are you chasing?" Roland said with a pant. "Ren Xiaosu, you let Chen Wushu help me catch Su Xianchu. I will give you 100,000. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. How did Su Xianchu run into the 109 barrier? "This is to let the Qingshi consortium catch Su Xianchu. Then I am afraid that something will happen otherwise." The palace opened his mouth and said that the task is to help the people in distress escape from the pursuit. Ren Xiaosu pondered in the judgment of the palace. Is Su Xianchu already a person in distress? Sounds quite miserable with this task. He is not ready to help. Roland closed the roller shutter door. I didn't care what Roland was scolding outside. I saw Ren Xiaosu go to the backyard and jump out directly over the wall, fleeing from the roof all the way to the direction where Su Xianchu fled at this time. Chen Wudi also wanted to go out with him. As a result, Yin Liyuan looked at him and said, "Your master asked you to be optimistic about the white bone essence. Do you want to let the white bone essence go?" He estimated that he would have to read for 3 days and 3 nights when he came back, and Chen Wudi immediately became honest when he heard this. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu's speed of jumping on the roof has been increased to the extreme, looking at Su Xianchu running in front of him Luo Lan, and they were chasing after him in the back. Ren Xiaosu kept up while thinking about what to do to rescue Su Xianchu and not offend Roland, and so on. Didn't he have a stuffy stick artifact the next moment? Roland saw that a hand suddenly stretched out in the shadow of the black face beside him, slapped him on the head, and directly slapped Roland to the ground. And then he left Su Xianchu and threw the pot to Luo Xingyun, who was a thug. This man is so pitiful. He was chased and killed all the way everywhere, fleeing all the way. Seeing Ren Xiaosu is like seeing a relative. Ren Xiaosu, why are you here? Ren Xiaosu jumped on the roof where Su Xianchu was and said to him, "Since the collapse of the 113 barrier, I fled all the way here." I heard that Ren Xiaosu also fled. Su Xianchu also felt sorry for each other. Seeing Ren Xiaosu, he instantly felt a sense of intimacy. Then tell him about the suffering in his heart. "I just happened to hide in Roland's car transporting arms. That arms will not be used against you. I didn't expect this Roland to come here in order to hunt you down." I heard Su Xianchu say this. Ren Xiaosu guessed in his heart that Su Xianchu didn't know that Luo Lan could not go back to Qingshi now. What was the smuggling of these arms actually doing? Looking at Ren Xiaosu's solemn expression, Su Xianchu said worriedly, "You have worked very hard to escape the pursuit of Qingshi." As he spoke, he took out half of the nest from his arms. "Are you hungry?" I don't know why Ren Xiaosu's nose suddenly soured. "I am not hungry." "Su Xian, you are a good person." This touching scene made Ren Xiaosu want to go to his relatives and turn himself, and he took out a letter and a stack of money from his pocket. "You take this thing, you take this letter, and go to the 178 barrier to find a person named Zhang Jinglin. He will give you a future." Thinking of that, Mr. Zhang, Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt that a person like Su Xianchu had arrived at the table. It will definitely shine. However, at this moment, there were several black shadows on the roof in the distance that were slowly advancing. Ren Xiaosu looked around and found that they were surrounded. When Ren Xiaosu saw the fire symbol on each other's chests, there is a spirit in his heart at this time. Su Xianchu's understanding of the outside world is obviously not as good as Ren Xiaosu. Be careful that they are not a good thing, specializing in arresting transcendentals. Let's say it's Su Xianchu took out a gun from his waist, although the sound of the gun may cause more trouble, but they don't care so much now. Ren Xiaosu observed the surrounding terrain. He may have to fight hard today. But the problem is that he doesn't want to show his summoning shadow in front of Su Xianchu at this time. The young man opposite said, "We have not failed in the early morning. We have not failed so far. Why don't you tie your hands and arrest it? Save us trouble." Su Xianchu hesitated for a moment and said, "Do you make a move in the early morning? Is it almost dawn now? The time on your table is not right." The young man in the early morning was obviously suspicious. He suddenly reacted. Su Xianchu was afraid that he had never even heard of this organization in the early morning. However, at this moment, Su Xianchu and Ren Xiaosu suddenly raised their hands and shot. The two of them did not hesitate as if they had discussed, but the targets they were aiming at turned their heads at the same time and dodged the bullets. Ren Xiaosu's heart slowly sank. No wonder the other party would talk nonsense. It turns out that his strength is so strong. He silently calculated in his heart how to deal with the predicament in front of him. If he really wanted to run, he might be okay to say, but Su Xianchu chose it. And he was targeted, and there will really be no trouble in the future. Suddenly, a bright voice appeared in Ren Xiaosu's pupils. Yang Xiaojing in the distance was looking over here with a huge sniper rifle. The opportunity has come. Pay attention to what this man wants to say. Ren Xiaosu and Su Xianchu. In the name of contributing to the survival of all mankind, in fact, I want to genetically edit them, but the price to be paid is the loss of freedom. How important is the price of freedom to Ren Xiaosu at this moment? The original swaying cloth no longer shook. The air between heaven and earth seemed to be condensed. There is no longer wind.